Inside the Birds is back. Welcome everybody to the all-new Inside the Birds live pregame show presented by DraftKings and here at Goose Island Brewery in Fishtown. I'm your Inside the Birds host, Geoff Mosher. Joining me to my left, Inside the Bird co-host Adam Caplan. To his left, we've got former Eagles Pro Bowl left tackle Trey Thomas.
All right.
And of course, you've seen him on ESPN's NFL Matchup Show, senior producer. He is the GOAT of tape breakdown, Greg Cosell. Fellas, we made it. Football's here. Who's excited?
I know I am.
I sure am.
Absolutely love it.
I sure am. I can tell you that.
This is awesome. This is great. It's great. I'm glad. Thankful to everybody, DraftKings, Goose Island, putting this together. We've got 2 hours of the best game breakdown coming up. We're going to have some personnel talk. We're going to have some injuries talk. We're going to get into everything. So remember, take a second right now. Help make this the most watched pregame show in the Delaware Valley. If you're watching on Twitter, hit that retweet. If you're watching on YouTube, share it, repost it, do everything you can to help make this show the most watched show, pregame show, Eagles pregame show in the Delaware Valley. And we're going to start off the show by doing what we do best here at Inside the Birds. We got breaking news on right tackle Lane Johnson. Adam, tell us more about the status of Lane Johnson.
All right, Geoff, thank you very much. So here's the deal with Lane Johnson. We know he had an ankle injury. We know he had surgery. That was out there already by ESPN. But what you didn't know is he had what's called tightrope surgery. That is a surgery that gets players back from normal ankle surgery, which would be 8 to 12 weeks, within 4 weeks. This is what Tua Tagovailoa had.
Right,
this is what Jalen Hurts had at Alabama. It gets them back within 4 weeks. Now, we're within that 4-week mark, but the way it was explained to me, Geoff, is this. It would behoove him to wait a week or two to come back, but you know Lane. He's a tough guy. Trey knows about playing tough. Oh, now see, he's making that face.
Trey's already making a face.
Making that face.
Go ahead, finish what you
All
got.
right, 7-2. All right, 7-2. I see. No, but anyway, he's going to play today. He's going to try to tough it out. I don't know that it'll finish. Now, here's the other thing I want to add. Jordan Mailata, I'm told, was the guy who took reps at left tackle and back of him in practice this week. So we'll see what happens, but the fact of the matter is he's going to play at right tackle. Somehow Jason Peters is back at left tackle. And Trey Thomas, why was that face? Why do you use that smirk?
Wait. Can I explain maybe?
All right, I got to know about this. All right, you tell us.
We have some video that I want to show the
right,
viewers,
cool.
and we're going to go to it in a second, of Lane Johnson that I know got Trey Thomas a little riled up. So let's show our viewers some of the video we have of Lane Johnson. Man, oh man, were those some moves, Trey? I don't remember ever seeing you do like that in the Eagles locker room.
No, and this was after the first scrimmage where you just gave up 13, 14 sacks. And this was how you're celebrating that performance? Hey, we have a day off and you dancing in the locker room like y'all just went out there and dominated the defense? I mean, when you say, okay, you just had this same surgery that was supposed to be a 4-week lag time that you're supposed to be down, why wasn't this done after the season was over? I mean, you didn't have to go to the Pro Bowl. If you had been dealing with ankle injuries for the past 2 years and you missed 4 games last year because of an ankle injury, why was this not done in January? So that's why I have a problem with it. You wait until you get to training camp to have something like this when you have a situation where you have someone that at the time was playing right guard that had never been in that position, and you needed to develop a chemistry between the two of you guys, and you go and have a surgery after getting destroyed for 14 sacks in a practice, and then you had your ass dancing in the locker room, and then now, oh, hey, I'm down for the next couple weeks because you had to have ankle surgery. I have a big problem with that, but I hope he comes and plays today.
Let me ask you really quick to follow up, though. On a serious note about playing, he's obviously going to be battling some stuff out there. You played through injuries. When it comes to the ankle, does that impact the anchor? Does that impact the set? Like, he's obviously going up against a very fierce pass rush. What should we expect from Lane today?
Well, it depends on which one it is. If it's his right ankle, that might be a problem because now if you're getting bull rush, that's going to be the leg that you're going to have to plan on, that you're going to have to really put a lot of weight on your outside trying to handle that anchor. And also, people just say, well, just shoot it up. Well, how does he know, that really doesn't work, because if you do shoot it up and you numb it, then now, you know, he can't apply the proper pressure. And if he gets an edge rush, then that's going to allow him to drop his outside foot. And then now that just creates an open lane to the quarterback. If it's his inside foot, then now anytime he gets that quick inside move, if he has to redirect, that could be a problem as well. And I think that when you come in and you say, all right, this is an offensive line that you're mixing and matching guys, you should expect a lot of games tonight, you know, today, because, I mean, you know, a lot of guys haven't played together.
And one thing I would add, Trey, is that this surgery was a result from the high ankle sprain, as you talked about, from last year, where he did miss 4 games. So, look, Peters is back at left tackle. And now Lane's going to play with a bad ankle that's been repaired. It would be much better if he waited, but this is what they have, Greg, going against this great Washington front.
Yeah, and one thing that if you look at what Ron Rivera has done, and I know he's not the D coordinator, but he's a defensive guy. Obviously, Jack Del Rio is the coordinator. But one thing we saw in Carolina with Ron Rivera is he would often, in pass rush situations, play with 3 defensive ends. So you could easily see Kerrigan, Sweat, and Young on the field on 2nd and long, 3rd and long, because I remember seeing Mario Addison last year in Carolina often lined up as a stand-up 3 technique. And the reason I mentioned this is Trey was talking about games. Then you get games, stunts, multiple stunt concepts with quicker guys. And, you know, that always poses a problem for offensive linemen. Particularly if you let offensive linemen into your chest, which, you know, Trey can talk more about how that's taught by the Eagles, but if you start letting offensive linemen get close to your body, it makes it more difficult to recognize and react to stunts.
Right, and we're going to get into trench talk a little bit. I know Trey's got a lot on that. You're bringing up the fact that if you have 3 DNs on the field, that means your interior line is also going to get stressed a little bit. They're going to get some fastballs coming at them. Adam, Doug Peterson kind of hinted at maybe don't just put Matt Pryor to be a lock at right guard today. Nate Herbig's name has come up. We both talked about him earlier in the offseason.
I'm kind of surprised by this. I'll be the first to admit I didn't think he had a prayer to start, but guess what? He took, I'm told, a lot of reps at right guard in practice this week, so he actually may get his first NFL start in his 2nd year, the former undrafted free agent out of Stanford. So, Greg, I know you saw his pre-draft tape. Tell us about what you saw there.
Yeah, I remember watching Nate Herbig at Stanford. And Stanford, people have to remember, they play a pretty conventional pro-style offense with the quarterback under center. A lot of the traditional NFL runs, gap scheme where guards pull and double teams if you're on a play side. So he's used to doing those kinds of things. I thought for a big man that he had reasonably light feet. I thought he was worthy of being drafted. Again, I'm not saying he should have been a top 50 pick, but I thought he was definitely worthy of being drafted. And I'm very anxious to see him perform today.
Yeah, obviously Nate Herbig, somebody we should keep our eyes on today, may get some playing time. We'll see. Want to get into some of the other injured players first. I want to remind everybody, please, if you're loving this show, hit that share button, hit that retweet, help us make this the most watched pregame show in the Delaware Valley. Let's talk about injuries, because there's kind of a laundry list. The Eagles are in mid-season injury form. They're all ready to go. This is like last year. Just
a lot of teams are,
just
because it was the pandemic off season.
Yeah, Miles Sanders obviously been downgraded. He did not make the trip. The information that Adam and I have been talking about on Inside the Birds for a while is that he's had a hamstring strain. And what I was originally told when it happened was that it wasn't the most severe, but it wasn't the least severe. You know, they usually go by numbers, so grade 2 would be the hamstring strain here. And, you know, it's unfortunate he doesn't get to play in the opener, Adam. It sounds precautionary, though. It
is. He's close. On the grade 2, I'm told with a running back, it's between a 3 and 4 week injury. He's in between 3 and 4 weeks now. Next week, he should be practicing more and potentially play against the Rams. I'm told on Thursday's practice he looked incredible. Remember, they didn't give him a lot. They cut his reps down, but he looked healthy. He looked really good, so that's a good sign. But a grade 2, based on an athletic trainer I talked to this week who's worked on NFL players, he said, a running back's not coming back in 2 weeks. You can't, because you got to run, cut, start, and stop. It's going to be up to 4 weeks. It'll be exactly 4 weeks on Tuesday or Wednesday. I think it's around August 18th that he got hurt, so he's doing well. Today it's going to be Boston Scott. We'll get into that later. But Boston Scott's got a lot of people have asked us about. And Greg, before we move on here, when you watched Boston Scott last year against the Giants, what did you see from him?
Well, obviously he's a small back, and I think he's mostly a satellite player. He's mostly a player that you want to use in longer yardage situations. He's very good in the screen game.
What's a satellite player mean?
Satellite player means he's not a feature back, he's not a foundation back, he's not a back on a weekly basis you're going to hand the ball to 15, 18 times. Now, can you do that once or twice? Maybe, and maybe he's the guy today. We can talk more about that. But at the end of the day, he's really a back you use in 3rd and long situations, who's a very good receiver out of the backfield, and you want to get him the ball in space. He's that kind of player.
You know, Trey, I think about the old the Andy Reid days, right? And he's known so much for passing, but it shouldn't be forgotten that Andy had an eye for running back talent and would address it in the draft. So when Brian Westbrook emerged, you know, he would miss time. He had the knee. Correll Buckhalter would go right in there. Different kind of guy than Boston Scott. But the idea is there was always somebody ready to take the reins and knew the offense. And I feel like Boston Scott this time around could be even better than last year because of knowing the offense and the comfort.
Absolutely, and the type of back that he is, he's going to be somebody that you can run in between the tackles. You know, he's someone kind of like a thicker Sproles, or someone that you can kind of hide behind a big offensive line, can get him in there. He's really decent with getting in between the tackles. Like you said, he's a good receiver out of the backfield. So I think that he's definitely going to bring something to the table, and we're going to need him. It's all hands on deck today. Yeah,
how much in that vein can the Eagles realistically expect from Jason Huntley? They picked him up from the waiver wire. He's been with the team for about 8-9 days. I mean, I know he can go out there and run, but about knowing the offense, though.
Yeah, you're going to keep the package extremely simple for him. You're not going to have him in there for a lot of stuff. But you know what? He's been around the game for a little while. You know, at the end of the day, it's all football. Inside zone is inside zone from Little League all the way up to this level here. But it's going to be the way you call the plays, the terminology, and just understanding how the center slides when it comes to blitz protection, because that's where it's going to show itself if he understands the protection and what their calls are and what's going to happen.
All right. Let's get to Jalen Reagor. Obviously, a lot of intrigue surrounding him. He had the labrum tear. We had talked about that. It was a very small piece of his labrum, and it seemed for a while that the Eagles were just going to play it safe, play it precautiously, but here he is, game day, and I'm told he's expected to play. You're told he's expected to play, Adam. What can we expect from Jalen, and what are you thinking about today?
Oh, he's going to play today. There's no question about it. The only question is how much. We're going to get into that. Once the inactives come out, we're going to have more information on how much he'll play, but here's the thing with Jalen Reagor. I was there that day, Geoff, when he got hurt, and when he was holding his arm, and we weren't sure it was an arm, then you and I would later find out within 20 minutes it was actually a shoulder injury. He's not having any pain. It's just some soreness. And he's kind of amazed the Eagles in his toughness, because when you tear your shoulder, when you tear it a little bit, your guy's got to reach for the ball, you're going to feel it. But he's really well built for a young guy, and he's feeling good. And they were convinced after Thursday and Friday's practice, why in the world would you hold this guy back when he's taking every single rep? So that's good news. And Geoff, I look forward to see how they use him today. And again, we're going to talk about it a little bit later.
Well, one thing that I reported many months ago, and we'll talk about it. I expect to see Jalen Reagor not only start at X today, but be moved all around the field. They want to get this guy open and in space. Greg, when you scouted him at TCU, did you feel like this is a player who was going to be like a movable guy that had that kind of explosion?
Yeah, and it's funny. I didn't necessarily see him as a true X, but I know he came in at the combine at 206, which surprised a lot of people. He's a very well-built guy, as Adam said. So maybe he'll end up being an X down the road. Well, he may be an X right now, but I mean, I didn't see him that way. I saw him more as a movement Z, as a slot guy, a guy that you want to move all around, get him free access off the line of scrimmage, which you can do much more with a movement Z because he's off the ball, not on the line of scrimmage. I think he's the kind of guy that fits the NFL game with jet sweeps, orbit reverses, the wide receiver screen game. He's very, very strong and competitive run after catch.
Real quick on this, Trey, because I want to ask you about being a rookie playing the X, which is the wide receiver position where you see the most amount of press coverage.
Yep.
And that's why you see a lot of rookies start off, as Greg was saying, as Z or movable. How confident are you today? I mean, look, we've watched Ronald Darby. That's probably who's going to be lining up against him. And Ronald could have he's not the most physical guy in the world. So maybe that was strategical in their mind when they thought that you could do it?
And then you're going to take advantage of his speed.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that you see is just, and you hear about, is just how fast he is, how much speed that he brings to the field. So even if you know that he's still dealing with some shoulder injuries, you can use him a lot of times as a decoy, someone that's going to pull coverage just because he has that over-the-top speed. And then you have Deshaun Jackson on the other side that can create some problems as well. So I think just with him, you're going to use him a lot just because of the speed that he puts on the field.
One thing to add before we move on to the next player, I'm told that Reagor has no pain, just some soreness, and they've been breathing a sigh of relief here. He's an amazing kid because his toughness. He told him like 3 to 5 days after the injury, Geoff, that he felt he was probably going to be able to come back early. And as you reported, the latest would be week 3 against the Bengals. They felt pretty confident he'd be back by week 2. And here we are, week 1, somehow he's playing. It's a tribute to him and their trainers, by the way.
And I'll add this. If he gets going early, he's not coming out of the game. They plan to use him and the most anyway.
Okay.
All right. Couple more injury notes. Corey Clement was dealing with the quadriceps injury. He was on the report Thursday, but it looks like he's going to play. He's going to be part of the running game. Alshon Jeffrey, Adam's been all over this. He is on the 53-man. Yep. He did make it. He has only 1 week of practice. I don't think you're going to see him.
He hasn't practiced yet, actually.
On the field,
he's
right.
not practicing yet. But they are convinced he will be back before that 6-week mark, which would have been the PUP mark.
Right.
They're pretty convinced of that. And the big one here, this is another one where I was there that day. Jannard Avery looked like he tore his ACL. He will play today. He will be their 4th end. He had a great week of practice. He is their only true speed rusher they have.
Yep, he's a good rusher.
Trey, being an offensive lineman, and guys who are not real big but could dip, how much could speed rushers give a problem for a tall tackle like yourself?
Oh, it can create a lot of problems, especially if they're good at giving with their one-hand stab. Because now if they come in with a one-hand bull rush, and if tackles aren't used to dealing with it, lifts your shoulder pads, and then once they dip down, then now you have to kind of go down with them, and that's extremely hard when you have a defensive end that can change levels like that, especially when they can get low and bend as well. So that can create a lot of problems for offensive tackle, especially right now with Washington. They've been having a couple of guys that's been interchanging at tackle, so they're not really sure what they have with their offensive line. So I think that's going to create some problems with them when you have someone like Avery. But now, what's going to be your change-up move as well? Because if you're going to continue to be a speed rusher, then you need to make sure that you're layering your rush, where you have one guy that's going to run high and then someone else that's not going to. You don't need both your defensive ends meeting behind the quarterback, is what I'm trying to say, at the same level. I want one coming high and one not as high, so they kind of go across each other instead of meeting right there at the back behind the quarterback.
Well, speaking of defensive linemen, I just want to get through, Javon Hargrave not going to play today. He's out. Not only did he have originally, when he hurt the pectoral strain, the projections were that he was going to be able to play, but now there's a hamstring injury on top of that.
That's new, by the way.
That is new, right?
Yeah,
right. So Malik Jackson will start. T.Y. McGill signed for depth, so they'll have their 4 defensive tackles. But the really interesting one is Derek Barnett, who has been out for almost all of training camp. It started off, I believe they called it a lower body injury, then it became an ankle injury. Now there's a hamstring, I believe it's
only the hamstring
there.
now.
Oh, it's now just a hamstring injury. Okay. Adam, what do you know about this situation?
I think it's partially because he's just not ready to play. He missed too much time. They want to see what he looks when he could physically be ready from a practice standpoint to take all the reps. He did not take even close to all the first team reps. He's just not ready yet. So here's the question. Josh Sweat has been a great story of development for the Eagles, but because of the leg injury which he had in high school, he's on a restricted snap count. I don't know, guys, if he could play 40 or 50 snaps.
He may not be able to.
Right, and that to me is a concern. So Vinny Curry, Geoff, as you reported, he was going to come back. He did. Here's the question.
Thank heavens that he did for this team right now, right?
Here's the question, Greg. You've seen Josh Sweat. A, what does he bring to the table, and what does Vinny Curry bring to the table?
Yeah, Josh Sweat always fascinated me because I remember watching him in Florida State and thinking that, God, this guy's, he's literally dragging his leg. Yeah.
FSU, that's right.
He was literally dragging his leg when in college.
Oh,
you know, and I felt like, wow, can this guy play in the NFL? And the other thing that they do in college, a lot of colleges do, which just drives me nuts, is they put these guys in a 4-point stance. You can't rush the quarterback out of a 4-point stance, and 4-point stance means you have both hands on the ground. So he did a lot of that in college. With the Eagles, he's shown flashes. I don't want to say he's a true burst guy, but he's shown flashes of quickness. Now, you have to remember, Josh Sweat, when he came into high school, was maybe a top 5 recruit in all the country. I mean, so he's got size, he's got talent, he's got movement. He's done well with the Eagles. Vinny Curry, on the other hand, I always thought he'd end up being a better player, and maybe Trey can speak to this as well. I always thought he'd be a better player, better pass rusher than he's turned out to be. Because there are times, to me, he looks really, really good. And both outside and inside, he's one of those guys you can line up because he's got length, he's got some weight to him. I think he, in some ways, like Malik Jackson, they're both tall, about 270 pounds. They can line up at D tackle and D end.
Oh, speaking of that, Geoff, I think, real quick, Malik Jackson, you and I talked about this in the spring when we started doing our off-season shows, and Schwartz talked about it. They've used, Greg just talked about it, Malik Jackson on the outside. Look for that today. I'm almost certain that's going to happen.
Right. I know you want to get in on your fellow Noel, so go ahead on Josh Sweat.
Absolutely, because when you look at Josh Sweat, when you walk out there and you stand next to him and you just like, wow, I mean, this dude is probably what he's like, that they have him listed at 6'4", 6'5".
6'5".
I mean, that's
he's a big dude.
Yeah, that's a lot of size
He's
at
a
the
big
defensive end.
Yeah.
I mean, that's height. And if you can rush with long arms, that's one of the things that I always talk to Vinny Curry about. Take advantage of the length of your arms, especially when you're dealing with offensive tackles that are being taught to grab and not punch. Now you can take advantage of your long arms, use that length, learn how to rush with the one-hand bull rush. The one-hand bull rush is extremely dangerous because everything can come off of it. You can go one-hand bull rush, one-hand stab and then bend the corner, one-hand stab and spin. There's a lot that can happen. And if you can use your length and use your arms, then now you're talking about something when you have someone that size.
All right, well, hey, this is a great segue to our segment Trench Talk, right? And if you haven't seen it yet, you got to check out Trey Thomas's YouTube channel. It's called In the Trenches with Trey. And if you're the kind of junkie that I know Greg is and Adam is and I is, you want to learn about slide protections and fire zone blitzes, how to pay, all the crazy stuff that offensive linemen need to know, that's the channel, In the Trenches with Trey on YouTube. All right, man, before we get into this talk, please, if you got a phone, if you're using a mobile device, retweet this show, share it, help make Inside the Birds live pregame the most watched pregame show in the Delaware Valley. We appreciate it. I already see it coming in. People are retweeting it. So thank you. Keep doing that. Trench Talk. All right. So I'm going to start with this, guys. I still think when you put the Eagles' offensive line up against Washington's today and most teams in the NFL, on name value alone, they're going to be the better offensive line. But as something I addressed with you on our Inside the Birds TV last week, Greg, I'm also a little bit concerned. I mean, it's aging and beat up in a little bit of areas, and I just wonder when the day is when they're not going to be what they've been for the last 5 or 6 years.
Well, it's funny you say that because, as you guys know, I did a deep dive on Carson Wentz this summer, and obviously I was looking at the offensive line as well. And I thought they had some problems last year. You know, I think that there's been this belief, and maybe it goes back to the Super Bowl year, obviously winning the Super Bowl, that this is a great O-line. Again, you guys know me. I'm all about the tape. I don't think this is an interpretation. I think their O-line has struggled at times in pass protection.
Absolutely.
And I think Trey would agree with that.
Yeah.
And they're playing against the defensive line today. You know, we talked about the defensive ends. But in studying Daron Payne, and because Washington hasn't been very good the last couple of years, I think Daron Payne's one of the 3 or 4 best D tackles in the league. People should go back and look at a sack he had last year against Tom Brady, where he was the looper in a stun concept. And I don't know if you remember this play, you saw it, he bent like a defensive end. You know, he showed that kind of motorcycle lean that you rarely ever see from defensive tackles. So this is a really good defensive line group, and I'm very anxious to see what the Eagles' pass game approach is, because I think they will struggle in pass protection with deeper drops.
Trey, I thought last year the Eagles, for the first time I can remember, struggled with those stunts and line games uncharacteristically than before. So that's the what. Tell us the why. Why did you see that too?
I think it's a lack of communication when it comes to it, and preparation as well. I think that just knowing how they prepare in practice, they spend a lot of time in practice on mate blocking, which is going to be your combination blocks when it's the run game. So they spend a lot of time on run blocking, combination blocks, getting up to the linebacker, taking care of the defensive lineman, working up to the linebacker. But they don't spend as much time in pass protection stuff and start switching off games and all the work that has to go into that. And you also, one of the things that is important when it comes to switching off games is making sure you're on the right levels and knowing where everyone is. If you're teaching guys to set at a 45, if you're saying, okay, I want my tackle to set at a 45 and my guard to set at a 45, then they're creating space between each other. You know, so now when you get an ET or a TE, where I'm talking about a defensive tackle first, or on the end is a looper or vice versa, if you have space, then it kind of hurt. It's hard to switch things off at times.
Right.
And you can see at times where Jason Peters was a little further back than Isaac was, and the time that it took to switch everything off wasn't there. The communication wasn't there. The chemistry wasn't there. So you see it a lot in their games when it comes to switching off those games.
Right, and hold that thought, because you actually pulled 2 video clips from a game last year against Washington. It's a sequence of 2 plays where you see them struggle in protection, and then you see what happens as the end result with Carson Wentz. So let's take a look at those 2 videos that Trey is talking about right now. All right, so that was an interesting sequence there. You saw a lot of pressure, and then on the very next play, Carson Wentz, a little scatter shot with delivering the football. What happened that made Carson a little scatter shot on that
Right
play?
there, you saw Daron Payne, what we were talking about, where he just went out there and beat Isaac. I mean, beat him like a drum. And then Isaac was one of the things that's important about Isaac is he's a center playing guard. So sometimes he gets a little wide in his stance and he can't redirect. And Daron Payne came out there, gave him a nice edge rush, and he put a lick on Carson that pretty much should have taken him out of the game. Because, I mean, he exploded into his helmet and hit him in the face. And then the next play, you could tell like that play affected Carson because he went out there and he only had a little short scat route out to the running back, and he overthrew him. And you could tell like he probably was still dazed from that hit because Daron Payne really put a nice hit on him.
So let me ask you a question, Greg, because hearing you and Trey talk about offensive line and how the Eagles sometimes struggle, and you and I were talking about this week, would you consider going to 7-man protection?
Well, it's funny you say that because 7-man protection is what's almost always used on what we call shot plays, where you want to drive the ball down the field. It's a deeper drop.
By the way, you know what they did last year? They took shot plays with Deshaun Jackson, who's healthy today.
Right. So it's a 7-step drop by the quarterback. You usually go with what we call max pro, 7-man protection. Sometimes you just send 2 receivers out, depending, because you know what you're going to get defensively if you, let's say, line up with 12 personnel, a tight formation. You know what you're going to get. And so sometimes it's just a 2-receiver route. Very often you'll see a route called a post cross, where you see a crossing route and a post route, and the quarterback just throws it off the post safety. You know, if he jumps the crosser, you throw it over the top. If he stays deep, you throw the crosser. It's simple stuff. But the thing that was fascinating to me last year watching the tape is when the Eagles went 7-man protection, they didn't protect very well. And that really surprised me because that's the whole point of doing 7-man protection is that you take care of everything and your quarterback has time to, because it's an either-or read. It's not a difficult read for the quarterback. But they just didn't have a lot of time.
Well, one thing that might be comforting about this discussion, and I'm going to have Adam talk about a little more, is Isaac Seumalo, as you mentioned, who is projected to be long-term a center but has been playing left guard. Adam has talked about his development this camp, and from what we have heard, a lot of good things from Isaac.
He and Kelsey were the 2 best linemen in training camp. Though, I will tell you, when Peters played right guard, I'm going to say after the first 4 to 5 days, they were blown away with how good he was. And Todd Herman's told us on our show, Inside the Birds Television, that because Jason's arms are not long like a typical left tackle, and he's bigger physically, he probably could play right guard, but the Eagles are obviously going to put him back to left tackle. But let me get back to Seumalo. Geoff, you had a really good note recently, and this tells you how far Isaac has come. His first 2 years, he wasn't getting it. Didn't have a lot of confidence. 3rd year, we know he started. That's when his career took off. But you had a note recently, which I did not know about. Not only did I not know about, I didn't know he was like this. What did you find out?
No, just something I was told was that Isaac has really stepped up this camp as a vocal leader. Obviously, there's fluidity going on the offensive line. There's some new guys and rookies, or even second-year players like Nate Herbig, who they're working in. And he intended to be the quieter type. And I heard that he had been trying to assert himself more vocally. Now, Trey, you just mentioned the communication issues. I mean, is this a positive development, or is that kind of wishy-washy media stuff that, you know, a guy is being a little bit more assertive in the locker room? Does that translate onto the field for communication?
I think so. I think it starts to show that you're starting to be a little bit more comfortable in your role, and you're starting to feel confident in your gameplay as well. But, you know, just when I go back and I look at some of the film, it's just some of the things that I saw from him. It's just that he just struggled when it came to some of the technique. Again, he was a center playing guard, so you see his stance is a little too balanced for me. So, because I want to see a guard with a little bit more stagger in their stance, and you would see him at times, he would get wide and he would get balanced like as if he was playing center. And then now that hurt him when it was time for movement, if he got a certain type of edge rush because he didn't have a stagger in his stance.
Right, I found him perplexing last year because I felt like there were times that Isaac looked like a pretty darn good left guard.
Yeah.
And then there were some of those games, I think Dallas, really, that's a team
Atlanta.
that
Atlanta game.
Atlanta
game
right.
was not good for him.
Right, that was, it's like when you're good, you're good. When you're bad, you're real bad.
And you can create, Trey knows this, you can create one-on-one matchups by how you align your defensive front. Let's say on 3rd down, you know, if you can go wide with whoever's a defensive tackle, you line him up wide, you line up the defensive end in a wide 9, you know, then your guard has to block one-on-one. Then you also have to decide which way you want your center to slide because there won't be anybody over him. So then you just have to, you know, that's all part of the schematics based on what you expect to see.
Yeah.
Most people have said with Jason Peters, getting back to him, that they can see him being a coach because he's been so helpful with the players in the locker room. Adam, you said something to me earlier this week that we haven't really talked about that I found fascinating. Why don't you tell our viewers?
Yeah, so when Peters retires, and by the way, he wants to play at least 2 more years. He wants to play till at least he's 40. I know. Greg's like, really? Yes.
I'm going to be dead, and this guy is still going to be lining up somewhere.
I can hardly remember when I was 40.
I mean, this is a guy, folks. This is a guy. This is a guy when he was with the Buffalo Bills as his 275 tight end. He was running down covering kickoffs. Okay?
Oh, I know.
He was an undrafted rookie.
He was a tight end in college.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So Peters has an interest in player personnel. The Eagles have actually talked to him about potentially being a team ambassador, something like that, when he retires. Coaching, we'll see, but what he does like to do is he likes to bring the offensive lineman into his place in wherever he lives, in Jersey or Philly, and they have like trench talk. They just go over stuff, and he mentors. The thing that they love, despite him being a quiet guy, doesn't talk to the media very much, he's great with his O-lineman. You want to know why Lane Johnson worships him? Because he teaches. We can say all we want about Jason, has been hurt, he's 38 years old, but he deeply cares about the guys he plays with. And it's really important to him. And he's, Trey was talking about being a connoisseur of offensive linemen and teaching and learning. He loves it. And that's one of his goals, in addition to, I think, the food industry. He may be in player personnel when he's done.
So if he wants to be a team ambassador, I'm wondering, does he call up Hugh Douglas for tips?
Team ambassador.
Right.
I remember that one.
Is he now the team badass?
Ambassador, man.
I'll never
Bodyguard
forget that.
ambassador?
Oh, boy. I remember that.
They gave him a badge and everything, man. It was crazy.
And they let him have a fight in the locker room, too.
But he clearly wants to keep playing. And I'll tell you what, we're going to learn a lot over these next 4 to 6 weeks because they've had a lot of moving parts on the offensive line.
Right, real quick before we move on to from Trench Talk, this should be a game when you look at Washington's offensive line, right? The centers, Chase Roulier, I believe.
Yep.
Garon Christian lining up at left tackle is not someone who I would say.
Well, their left side's a question.
Right.
Wes
So
Martin will be a
like,
left guard.
Yeah.
Christian, who actually has really light feet. I watched him coming out of Louisville. He's actually a very good athlete. But Trey could speak more to this. I think that he's very unrefined in the way in which he plays. But he's actually got the physical and athletic traits you look for in a left tackle.
It's got to be a game for the D-line, right? I mean, this is an area you got to exploit on Washington.
Absolutely, because our defensive line is going to be probably our strong point with our team right now. So, when you have some of these rushers out here, they're going to have to get after it. I mean, just because you see what this offense can do when you're looking at Washington. As you have a quarterback back there that can move around, and they have taken you to the wire in both games. So, you're going to need our defensive front to really get after it.
Absolutely. All right, let's go move into the skill position. We'll talk about Carson Wentz a little bit. And remember, if you like what you see, even if you don't, hit share, retweet. I don't know how you could love this.
Well,
this
that's
is some
when
of the best
Caplan talks,
analysis you got going on. But, hit the share button, hit the retweet. We really appreciate it. Let's help make Inside the Birds pregame live the most watched show, pregame show in the Delaware Valley. I want to talk about Carson Wentz. We alluded to it today because Washington, first of all, is switching from a 4-3 to a 3-4 to a 4-3. So it's a different look than he's used to practicing against. And Greg, a lot of people don't know this about you. You were a basketball player back in your day.
I was.
Pretty good one, right?
I was.
So it's pretty fitting that when we were talking about Carson Wentz recently, you used a basketball analogy about some of the things you saw last year, which was just missing a few too many layups. I think is how you said it.
Yeah, well, just let me make one quick point. And Trey knows this as well. The 3-4-4-3 thing sometimes can be overrated because it's not who has their hand on the ground and who's standing up. It's where they line up.
Right.
It has to do with gaps. So sometimes teams that actually have 2 guys on the outside that stand up and people just say it's a 3-4, it may not be a 3-4 in the way guys line up. It still could be a 3 technique and a no shade, which is more of a 4-3. So I just want to make that point. Trey knows this exactly. But when it came to Carson Wentz, as I said, I did a deep dive, and I don't want to talk for 20 minutes here, so we'll go back and forth. But I think he's a supremely talented guy, okay, because he can play extremely well from the pocket and he can make plays outside of structure. I think the main thing with him is that on routine throws, he just needs to become a little more consistent with his ball placement. See, I always use the term ball placement as opposed to accuracy, because you can you can complete balls, but the ball placement isn't as precise as it needs to be. So he misses a few too many routine throws. Those are the layups I talk about. And I think at this point in his career, he's much more of a playmaking quarterback than a subtle, nuanced, detailed, disciplined craft quarterback, and he needs to continue to work on that.
Greg, is it a mechanics issue when you see that?
At times. Sometimes his base is too wide, and sometimes he falls away from throws. And that will cause balls to sail. And I think those are things that need to be worked on. They can be tightened up. Anything below the waist can be tightened up. You're not going to change the way a guy throws a ball. That just doesn't happen. Certainly not at the NFL level. But anything below the waist can be cleaned up.
And I think what you say, ball placement, is extremely accurate when you talk about quarterbacks, because it's not everybody says accurate like you're throwing at something. You're throwing at spots. You want to lead the receivers. You're not throwing at the receiver. You're throwing at where the receivers are going to be.
You're throwing to air is the term.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, that the ball placement, I think, is an extremely good term when it comes to talking about quarterbacks and where they're trying to go.
Yeah, it's interesting because we're going to probably follow this all year long. I'm inclined to think, you know, as someone who's covered the game for a while, I'm certainly not an expert, but when you make the playoffs 3 straight years and you have all the injuries that you do, that in general, you have a pretty good coaching staff. They can hold it together. They know how to deal with the personnel that they have. But you've talked a lot about, with us on the offensive line, about certain mechanical things that you think can be cleaned up. We're talking about this with Carson Wentz now in year 5, where there are certain things that he can be cleaned up. And I just wonder at one point, if things don't go well, where we start to look at, well, why aren't these things that we've been seeing for a little bit more crisp?
Let me just give you a very quick anecdote. Joe Montana, okay, Hall of Famer. People would say he's one of the, maybe the best, or certainly 2 or 3 best quarterbacks ever to play. When he finished his first year in Kansas City, okay, after he'd been traded from the 49ers, he was a Hall of Famer by then, clearly.
Yep.
He called Bill Walsh, his coach, you know, with the Niners, who was a stickler, obviously, for mechanics and the discipline of the position. And at this point, Bill Walsh was not coaching. And Joe called Bill Walsh and said, hey, Coach, I felt like in this past year in Kansas City, my mechanics weren't quite what they needed to be. Can you help me with that? So, you know, mechanics are something you always have to work. It's true at any position. We just tend to notice it more at quarterback because it's a very visible position.
And Greg,
but you know, Trey could talk about that with O-line. You know, technique, fundamentals.
Bill Walsh had personnel control. He was the one who traded him to Kansas City. That's unbelievable.
So I mean, that's something you always need to work on, because you can't miss. When you're clean in the pocket, okay, we're in the NFL now. There's a lot of throws that aren't clean. You can't break down your mechanics.
Right.
You know, Bruce Arians would tell you that when you have clean throws, when the pocket's clean, you should complete 100% of your passes, because everything should be right. We know the NFL's not like that. The pocket's not always clean. You can't break down your mechanics. You still have to stick with your proper fundamentals, technique, and mechanics. Those are the guys that are the big-time quarterbacks.
Is it, you know, I spoke to a team guy, and he once said to me, we know what Carson is. We know that there are going to be some of those throws that, you know, that get sailed a little bit. And we kind of had a discussion about how Brett Favre was a little bit like that. He would make some crazy throws that would be great. He would make a few inaccurate ones. He threw some interceptions later in his career, but he was obviously one of the best that ever played. Trey, when you look at Carson Wentz, do you feel like that you get that kind of vibe that he's always going to be a little bit of a cowboy in how he's out there and his mechanically?
Yeah, I think so. You know, he's going to be that gunslinger. You know, he's going to be someone that's going to take some chances. But that just shows the confidence that he has in his arm. But I think, like, just like any other quarterback, you have to protect him. You know, you can't go out there and let him get hit. I mean, I think last year they gave up, I think I was trying to look for it real quick. I know they gave up 100 quarterback hits, and then probably you were north of 30-something sacks last year. You know, so, I mean, that's a lot of punishment that a quarterback is taking. I mean, you know, it only took 2 games before he was knocked out of a game. In Atlanta, he had to go sit down for a couple plays due to he was dizzy or whatever. He was knocked out. So, you know, you have to go out there and protect him just like any other quarterback. And now he needs to sometimes, you know, get rid of the ball, go down. But, I mean, you know, he is a gunslinger and is going to take some chances.
Well, he's got a playmaking mentality. That's his mindset. And that's one of the reasons the Eagles did what they did this offseason with speed. You know, I've been on record saying last year, and this is what the tape said, that they were one of the slowest, if not the slowest offense in the NFL going down the stretch. Okay, they needed speed, but it also plays to what Carson Wentz is as a quarterback. He did an outstanding job in those final 4 games having to play within a certain style of offense. Okay, that's not the way he wants to play, and they they know that in the organization. He wants to push the ball down the field. And that's why Deshaun being here is critical. That's why they went and got Goodwin, who of course opted out. And again, we're not speaking about volume receivers. We're not suggesting Goodwin, if he played, was going to catch 90 balls.
Right.
That's not the point.
Yeah, Torrey Smith didn't catch that many passes, but
the point is they
right.
want speed, because that changes the looks they get defensively,
Right.
and it allows for certain things to happen. Last year they had no speed, and they were Carson Wentz was forced to be a precision player, and he did a pretty good job. As I said, he needs to keep working in that area, but that's not the way he wants to play.
Right, right. Let's talk quickly about the addition of Rich Scangarello, Adam, to the offensive coaching staff. He is a Kyle Shanahan disciple, although he was in Denver last year as the offensive coordinator. Now he's here to introduce some of, and they've been open in talking about this, some of those Shanahan-like concepts into the Eagles offense. How will that impact Carson Wentz?
Yeah, it'll help, because the one thing that they want him to do is kind of marry that run game and pass game together. This is big for him. This is just like how Shanahan does it. And you're talking to the pretty good Broncos source. They love the way his offense was schemed. There was a disagreement between the OC Scangarello and the head coach Vic Fangio. But from a just a visual standpoint, he did a good job. He just didn't have a good starting running back. Now they have one in Melvin Gordon. Mm-hmm. And then you bring Marty Mornhinweg in, who's obviously Doug knows from their days in Green Bay and the Eagles, obviously. And you get all these new coaches, and they're sort of the reassigning of responsibilities. This offense is going to change a little bit. It's still Doug's version of the West Coast, but it's going to be bombs away. But you're going to see some wrinkles this year. And Greg, I know you've studied Kyle Shanahan's offense.
Yeah.
What does that bring to you when you watch tape?
Well, what Kyle Shanahan does maybe better than any offensive coach in the league is attack individual players, particularly in zone coverage, because you can do that. Zone defenders have specific responsibilities, okay? And if you study, I spoke with Kyle Shanahan about this a number of years ago, and he talked to me about you have to understand the responsibilities of defensive players in zone coverage, and then you know how to break them down with what you do. That's why the play-action game is so effective. The play-action game isn't effective in the way people normally think, oh, it holds linebackers. People just throw that out there. You know, and sometimes that's true, but it's not always true.
Right.
But see, when you run, let's say you line up a certain way, okay? You know that if you run a certain kind of play, that linebacker, that his first responsibility is run. Okay, so his eyes are focused on run. So then you know that he also has a pass responsibility. He can't play both.
Right.
So what you do is you're attacking a particular player within a zone scheme. Kyle Shanahan's the best in the league at that, so maybe those kinds of principles will be brought here.
Trey, Carson Wentz outside the pocket, which is a lot of what the Shanahan concept is. Mm-hmm. Is that good for him? Is that going to be a wrinkle that you think that will help and benefit this Eagles offense?
I think so. You get him moving, you move the pocket, and then it also helps when you don't have the protection that you necessarily is there. So now you can run some play action, run some Q8s, like we used to call it for short yardage stuff, where it's kind of everything is kind of walling down, and then you have some front side runs type style blocking going on. So I think that would help as well. But if it were me, I would be studying everything that Big Red and Eric Bieniemy are doing out there in Kansas City with a lot of those quick passes. I mean, a lot of short jump-offs. I mean, where you go back and you look at, when I looked at Mahomes the other day, I mean, he only had a couple passes that went over 2.3 seconds. A lot of them were 1.6, 1.8, 2.0. That's why I watched the game with a stopwatch and different color pens. So, you know, I timed the throws. So you look at it, you go there, and it's like, all right, all of these little dink and dunk short passes can also help out with some of those bigger passes that over the top.
You said it, so I have to ask you. And for those who don't know, Trey was out in Kansas City this summer at their training camp. I guess Andy invited you in. You did some coaching there. And why don't you tell me about your mindset going in as the coach and then how you left?
I don't know this one.
I just went out there and was just like, hey, man, I'm ready to go, you know, and I had to do the 4 days in my hotel and just sit there and wait, go get the corona test and everything. And then when I finally got there, and, you know, we're out there on the field, and, you know, Big Red was like, hey, man, let's get some more water out there and all these extra breaks. What is this? Big Red. Another break?
He's getting soft?
Are we really having another water break right now? What is this?
Right.
But, man, just to go out there and watch Patrick Mahomes work, I was, you know, like I had to just calm down a little bit and just act like, oh, yeah, I've seen that throw before.
How so?
Man, it's just the way he could roll to the left and just be in full sprint and then just turn and then just throw a pass down the right sideline and hit the receiver in stride. I mean, you saw him roll out to the left one time, put the ball in his left-hand side, arm it to a receiver. I mean, it was just ridiculous to see him at work. And just to see us, it's not pretentious. He seems to be a true leader and someone that's out there trying to get better.
Well, I believe you didn't say it now, but when you explained it to me, you said you went from coach to fanboy in about 10 minutes.
Yeah, just real quick. I was just trying to stay calm. They're like, oh, yeah, I've seen that before. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because I've spoken to GMs around the league, and maybe Adam has too, who think, clearly Mahomes is the most gifted quarterback in the league. I don't think anybody would argue with that. But I've had a number of GMs tell me that after Mahomes, it's Wentz. Wentz is highly talented. And Wentz has had some of those plays too. I remember a play from last year where the pass rush came in and he bent down underneath the pass rush and then made a great throw. Yeah. I mean, he's made, was it against Washington that he threw the touchdown to Miles Sanders?
Well, yes,
in the corner of the end zone. I mean, there's not a lot of quarterbacks who are making that throw.
Right, remember the Monday night game when the duck under, where we all thought he was going down and get sacked, but it's interesting when you talk about Carson Wentz and you talk about Mahomes. Talking to GMs and quarterback coaches around the league before that 17 draft, when we're talking about Mahomes, if you give these guys truth serum, not a lot of guys thought Mahomes would make it because he was off schedule. Yeah, mechanics weren't really good, but it's the value of coaching in the National Football League. Perfect scenario. Andy Reid, one of the best quarterback developers in the National Football League. Mike Kafka, by the way, is going to be probably a head coach someday. A lot of people are like, Mike Kafka? Yeah, Mike Kafka is a pretty sharp guy. So Geoff, this is the way the league is. The drop-back quarterbacks like Carson Palmer, who's a great player, you don't have to be a drop-back quarterback anymore. The athletic guys, like Mahomes, like Wentz.
Well, that's a
Russell
fascinating
Wilson,
discussion.
Okay? And you and I have had it. We've all had it.
I've had it with coaches. I've had it with coaches. What's the balance now?
Right.
Carson Palmer came out in 2003, and he didn't play a snap his rookie year, which is never going to happen in the NFL again with a #1 pick. But he's viewed as the absolute prototype, and I think if a Carson Palmer was coming out today with that kind of talent, he would still be seen that way because there's not 50 Carson Palmers who can throw the ball like that. But I think that we're getting into that whole conversation, and there may not be an answer, or let's put it this way, different people will answer it differently, as to the balance between playing from the pocket and then having the ability to move and make off-schedule plays.
Well, one thing I want to add to that with Mahomes, Greg, did it change the way you looked at quarterbacks? Because I know you're a big drop back.
Yes.
You and Jaws. I learned the quarterback position for 10 years
and
from
that's
you
how
and
I
Jaws.
learned it.
Right. But have you looked at it and said, you know what? This guy could be great because he still makes the throw. Brett Favre was non-traditional, but he had a howitzer.
But then you also think back, and again, I know these guys are going to be Hall of Famers, but then you look at the Breezes and the Bradys, and you say, okay, can you still play the position that way? I mean, both those guys are masters at pocket movement, which is different from off schedule. They can navigate within the pocket, which is a form of off schedule, but it's not the same as running outside the pocket. So pocket quarterbacks, and Haskins today, he's a perfect example of how he's going to have to develop that to be a really good player, because he's not going to be an off-schedule run-around guy, but he's going to have to learn how to navigate within the pocket to find a little quieter place to deliver the ball comfortably. So you need to be able to do that. But it's a great question, and like I said, I think different people will have different answers, and they're all valid.
Yeah, well, Carson Wentz and Dwayne Haskins will be the man for their respective teams today, when the Eagles and Washington kick off 1 o'clock in Landover. Is it still called FedEx Field? Or do we? Is it?
It's in Landover.
It's in Landover now. All right, whatever
Washington,
field it's called.
It's East Coast time zone. That's all I know.
East Coast time zone, right? 1 o'clock. Yeah.
We're going to talk about some other men of the game. Before we do that, as we get into our Manscaped Man of the Game segment, Trey Thomas is going to tell you a little bit about Manscaped, and the rest of us are going to try to keep and act like adults here. Go ahead, Trey.
All right. Hey, man, Manscaped products. Hey, this important PSA is brought to you by Manscaped.com. All right, here we go. After more than 18 months of research and development, the Manscaped engineering team has successfully created the greatest male undercarriage trimmer ever created. I present to you the new and improved Lawnmower 3.0. This third-generation ball trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to prevent manscaping accidents. Millions of balls are about to be nick-free thanks to Manscaped's advanced skin-safe technology. I've been talking about Manscaped for a while now with the and the shorter the grass, the taller the tree. If you use the Lawnmower 3.0, it's an easy transition, because now the Manscaped is a replacement blade with new and improved skin-safe technology. One of the new features is a LED light which illuminates the grooming area so you can boldly take this trimmer where no trimmer has gone before. They even upgraded their motor to a 7,000 RPM motor with quiet stroke technology. So if you want to try, doing something different and not using the same old school trimmers and snagging your nuts, go to manscaped.com and use the promo code TRADE, T-R-A, for 20% off and free shipping. Again, that's manscaped.com, promo code TRADE for 20% off and free shipping. Always use the right tools for the job. Your balls will thank you.
Folks, when I told you that this would be the most in-depth analysis that
Wow.
you're going to get on any pregame show, that's what I meant right there.
You always want to feel good down there. Whatever it is,
Absolutely.
you know.
No
You
doubt
don't wanna
about
take
it.
I'm not
your
touching
chances.
that line.
Trey, no, do not touch it.
That's right. Give us your Manscaped man of the game for today.
My Manscaped man of the game is going to be the offensive line. We need whoever's going to be out there, we need them to go out there and protect Carson Wentz and really open up some holes for this run game. You have a lot of questions there, so they're going to have to really show up and play.
Offensive line, one man. Okay. Greg Cosell, your Manscaped man of the game.
I'm going to pick Dallas Goedert, and here's the reason. I know Rieger's going to play, but I think there's still uncertainty at the wide receiver position going into week 1. And I think what we saw last year is they played with 12 personnel, meaning 1 back and 2 tight ends, more than any team in the league. And certainly those last 4 weeks, I think they were above 60% playing with 1 back and 2 tight ends. And I think that that's something we'll see a lot of early. And I keep waiting for Dallas Goedert because I think he's really talented. I keep waiting for him to be kind of the man. I know Zach Ertz is kind of that guy in the context of their offense at the tight end position, but I think Goddard is really talented, and I'm sort of waiting for that breakout.
Adam, your Manscaped man of the
Well,
game.
it's funny, before we get to mine, you had said, you were on record saying on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio that Dallas Goedert's a better athlete than Ertz. Is that true?
I think he is, but
How so?
I think he's just a little better mover. I think Goddard is better run after catch. To me, Zach Ertz is a master technician as a route runner. Mm-hmm. A great feel for working against leverage, both zone and man. He knows how to separate. He's a terrific route runner. That's what, to me, his strength is. He gets open. But I don't think he has a whole lot of run after catch ability, unless he's got a lot of space. Anybody can run after catch. But I think Goddard's just a better athlete in that regard.
Well,
notice that they don't use Ertz in the screen game when they use Goddard a ton in the tight end screen game.
It's interesting. Okay, okay.
Your Manscaped man of the game.
Well, I'm doing Goddard, but you saw me, Jeff. I had it before he did. But no.
Breaking news.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about this. I want people to know.
We didn't. No, but
discuss
here's
it.
why.
At Caplan NFL had it first.
Yeah, but here's why. The Washington team, which mostly has the same secondary, 5th worst against opposing tight ends last season. The Eagles will make their money today, whether you have Ertz for fantasy, you play him, and Dallas Goedert this week. Now, I do want to make note of something. We knew he had the broken thumb. Well, the first couple days of practice after he fractured his thumb, he was okay, but it was bothering him, so I'm told he actually had a follow-up surgery. He actually did have surgery, Jeff, so it'll be casted. He's going to be okay to do it. The tight ends today are going to be big, and I remember Zach Ertz telling me last year when they got Deshaun Jackson, that will open up so much underneath for those guys because when you got speed downfield, you can't cover everybody.
And the Redskins linebackers are a weakness of their defense.
Good point.
I
Absolutely.
think there's a lot of uncertainty there as to who's going to play in what situation. So I think that you definitely want to attack those linebackers.
All right, well, my Manscaped man of the game is going to be Josh Sweat. I figure he's going to be lining up a lot at right defensive end across from Washington's, we'll call him green left tackle, Geron Christian. And that's just a matchup I think that they have to exploit. Josh Sweat had a really good camp. I know he was going up against Matt Pryor there at left tackle for a little bit, but in general, even before that, he was doing really well. So I look for Josh Sweat to be overwhelming for Geron Christian today. Why don't we flip the script a little bit and get into defense? Because the Eagles brought in a very important player this year. They did not sign a free agent cornerback. They were in on trying to get Byron Jones, and when they missed on Byron, they went out and traded for 3-time Pro Bowl cornerback Darius Slay. Adam, you've been talking ever since they acquired him about what Jim Schwartz can do now in this defense that he has an elite cover corner.
Jeff, you and I last season were critical of Jim Schwartz from our sources who were watching the tape from other teams. One thing we hone on is what did the opponent think every week? And I kept hearing the same thing. Schwartz is very little pre-snap and post-snap disguise. But the thing is, and we need to be fair about this, you coach to the talents that you're given. They were so bad at corner, and Howie Roseman said, listen, after they acquired Slay, he was sick and tired of the ball going over the DB's heads. The Eagles, when you look at the amount of production they give up to the receiver position over a 5-year period, either the worst or the second worst in the National Football League of giving up yardage and touchdowns to receivers. So they got Darius Slay, 29 years old. Talked to a line source, big-time leader. But the big thing that he wanted to do to come to Philly, they want to play man coverage. They're going to play man travel. It's not sides anymore. Now, Jim Schwartz did say, though, in his press conference with the media, it's not going to be every week. But here's the question. Do you do it this week against McLaurin, who burned them last season, Jeff?
I mean, isn't this the week?
Wouldn't you do it?
Isn't this the
I'll
They've got
address
one
this.
guy.
Go ahead. Start with
right?
you, Greg.
All right, Washington's got one guy.
Well, there's a couple of
That can
things
beat
here.
you really
Number
bad.
one, you don't bring in Darius Slay and not have him match up, particularly when your other outside corner is 5'9".
Right.
So now, granted, McLaurin is not 6'3", but we have a history here. Detroit played Washington last year, and Detroit played as much man-to-man coverage as any team in the NFL, with the possible exception of the New England Patriots. So Slay matched up against McLaurin last year on about 20 snaps, and it was a really competitive matchup. It was a fun matchup to watch. McLaurin made some catches, Slay made some great plays. So from my perspective, you will see Slay on McLaurin. McLaurin is clearly their best outside receiver. There's questions at their other receiver position. So again, I don't. Then it comes down to predictability. Some teams defensively just line up and say, here we are, this is the way we're playing, you're going to have to beat us. Other teams don't want to line up that way because they feel they're predictable.
Right.
We don't know exactly what Jim Schwartz will do, but I can't believe they did what they did with Darius Slay, not to match him up to opposing teams' best receiver.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And just in case anybody needs a refresher course, and I don't think they want it, but I'm going to give it to you. Last year, Terry McLaurin, 5 catches for 125 yards and a touchdown in the season opener. All right, it's the first game. You're a little surprised. No, not really. The second time around later in the year, 5 catches, 130 yards and a touchdown, a 75-yard touchdown after catching a 69-yard touchdown in the first game.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned those plays. The 69-yarder was a clear bust. I remember the play. And the 75-yarder, the safety, I forget who it was, took a really bad angle. It was a slant route. You remember this, Trey? It was a slant route, and the safety just took a terrible angle. I forget who the safety was.
Who was that, though? Would that be McLeod on that one? The way you started the year?
I don't remember.
Can't remember.
I don't remember, but I do know the Eagles remember it, and they remembered it in the offseason.
I don't want to call anybody out. It wasn't. It might have been Epps, because he started to play a lot
That's
of
right, I
post safety
forgot
late in
about
the
that,
season.
yeah.
But it was just a bad. I mean, it was still a completion because he caught the slant. He was wide open. It should have been a 12-yard gain.
Right.
Yeah, and the thing about Terry McLaurin is this. He was sort of in Paris Campbell's shadow at Ohio State, but high character guy, hard worker, and he's faster than you think, Greg.
He's also
a playmaker.
Tough and competitive.
Okay.
The tape showed that. I went through all of his pass targets a couple of weeks ago from last year, his rookie year, and he is tougher than you think because he's not a big man, but he's very competitive, and he was extremely refined as a route runner for a rookie. He had a touchdown against the Dolphins where he ran a terrific corner route, but he used his head and his body to sell either the crosser or the in-breaker. It was as good a route as I've seen, and he was a rookie. So he's pretty refined as a route runner.
Is there something about Ohio State's very run-heavy offense that the receivers there don't get as much exposure in the pre-draft process, and they're not a lot of first-round picks,
Well,
like guys like Mike
the thing
Thomas?
you normally don't see for people who look at this, and I don't believe you should look at this when you evaluate a player, but again, hey, this is just my opinion. Their wide receivers tend not to have big production numbers. And for those scouts and GMs who always look at production, and there are many like that, and I'm not saying it's wrong, it's just that's not the way I do it. I try to look at traits.
Right.
So I think McLaurin, coming out of Ohio State, only caught 35 balls his last year. So he didn't have that big production that a lot of college wide receivers have. People knew he could run. I think he ran under a 4.4, if I'm not mistaken. But I think he was kind of pegged as a speed guy. And he showed last year in his rookie year with Washington that he's much more than just a speed guy.
Trey, the idea of following and shadowing, as Adam mentioned, there is a little bit, while that's a great thing because you can have a guy who can do it, it's a little bit of a giveaway, right, that you're in man if you see the cornerback running with the wide receiver the whole time. So is there any advantage there that Washington can capitalize on? They don't have a whole lot of playmakers.
Yeah, well, if he's following you a better playmaker, then that's going to limit you a lot, and one of the things any issues that we had last year is that the coverage wasn't as tight, and everybody was playing so far off, and the quarterbacks could just tick and deke and dunk you down the field. So, you had situations where the coverage just wasn't there, and I think that, to me, coverage dictates sacks. So, I think that's, if you could get out there and make that quarterback have to hold the ball just a tick longer, then now that's going to give you a defensive front chance to kind of get there. So I think that's definitely going to help us and limit the Washington football team when it comes to being able to shut down their better receiver.
I think that, just hearing Trey speak, I think there's also a fascinating discussion now this game around the league as to what's more important, pass rush or coverage. For years, everybody just assumed it was pass rush, but the game has changed to where there's so much more quick game. There's so much more, 3-step drop timing throws, quick 5-step drop timing throws. It's why you're seeing more man coverage in the NFL, because you do not want to give receivers free access off the ball to get into those quick game routes, because then you're just giving up completions. So you want to be able to get press man corners, because now you have to disrupt receivers because the pass rush doesn't get there on 3-step drops or quick 5-step drops.
Right, we know that nobody puts more emphasis on the cornerback position in the league than the Patriots, right? And the Patriots have two babies in the NFL, the Detroit Lions and the Miami Dolphins, right? Because of the coaching. And look at those teams, what they've done.
Played a ton of press man last year. Now, they, other than Slay, they didn't have any corners.
Right,
and
they just drafted Jeffrey Okudah.
Right, and they couldn't get to the quarterback at all, the Lions.
Right.
And Brian Flores in Miami played a ton of man last year. So, I mean, again, now we're speaking philosophy of defense, but the game has changed.
Yeah.
Greg, have you noticed that trend? Because when I first started watching tape with you and Jaws, it might have been a lot of man in the early 2000s.
That was back in the days of the caveman.
Yes, that's right, I know. Man, we've changed.
I know.
Got a little older, but back in the early 2000s, it seemed like a lot of man. Then there was a trend of a lot of zone.
Yeah.
And now it seems, from talking to teams, and we've all brought up, man coverage seems to be sort of the soup du jour. Is there any particular reason for that?
Well, just one, I just mentioned the main reason.
But it's just a talent standpoint?
Well,
you guys could handle it?
The other thing, too, is far more communication is needed playing zone.
Okay.
It's tougher to teach zone concepts than it is man. Man is, hey, I got you.
Right, right.
Now, granted, there's always techniques that you teach in man, but zone, there's a ton of communication, and different coaches teach zone concepts differently. Because, you could be playing cover 3, and the question becomes, okay, how far do I sink against certain routes? Do I sink 8 yards? Do I sink 10 yards? When do I pass them off to my safety? When do, there's all kinds of communication. A lot of times we see watching games on Sunday, and thankfully we'll be doing that today.
Yes.
You see after a big play, you'll see defensive backs talking to one another.
Right.
Because it's, hey, I thought I passed him off to you, but you didn't pick him up in time. And don't forget, every zone has a void. Otherwise, everybody would play the same zone.
Cover 3, Seattle cover 3, in the middle with tight ends.
Right.
And just real quick, when you talk about needing those corners to come in there and play a little bit more physical on the receivers, I'm just giving you my notes real quick just off the Kansas City game.
Yeah,
and just going off Patrick Mahomes. His first throw, 1.5, 1.3 seconds. Then he had a pass that was 3.1 seconds, 2.4, 2.3, 1.8, 2.2, 1.3. You only had one pass that went over 2.5 seconds.
You clocked all of his pass seconds.
So you got to.
Do you sleep?
So you have to press now, because if you're going to do that and not press, if you're going to have quick game like that, then you're just giving up completions.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about Zach Ertz. Speaking of completions, first, look, we're about an hour through this first Inside the Birds live pregame show. We're going to be here all year long, 2 hours prior to kickoff. The people you're seeing are the people you're going to see all year long, so we're really excited about this. Also, in about 20, 25 minutes, I think the inactives will be coming out, so we'll break and talk about who's
I will
inactive,
be inactive today, by the way.
You're
Geoff.
inactive?
I'm inactive today.
Trey, you may need to be active today, given the state of the offense. Are you ready?
Man, you know what? A lot of people ask me all the time, man, why? Hey, we need you back. Man, I went and played foot golf with my kids the other day.
Foot golf?
Foot golf.
Nice.
Foot golf?
Yeah, foot golf. You kick the ball instead of like swing. Yeah, you go out there and you kick the ball. And my right knee needs to be replaced. Man, I've been hobbling all week, so it's...
That doesn't sound good.
So we'll just move you to right guard instead of left tackle then, and it'll all be fine.
Yeah,
All right, again, please retweet this, share this. We want to make Inside the Birds pregame live the most watched pregame show in the Delaware Valley. So don't hesitate. Even though we're an hour in, keep retweeting, keep sharing. Loving the fact that we're getting interaction already. Zach Ertz. I'm going to get to you in a little bit, Trey, because I feel like you weren't an Eagle in the 2000s if you didn't have something going on with your contract, right? We'll start with Adam, though. Ertz said some things this past week. He doesn't know if the feeling is mutual about an extension. Where do things stand, Adam?
So, Geoff, last year, Zach, for the third time in his career with the Eagles, was asked to restructure his contract to create cap space. He did right by the club. He could have said no. Some other players have said no, but Zach did right by the club. And his expectation was that in good faith, he would get a kind of offer that would reflect they want him here the rest of his career, particularly guaranteed money and structure. Now, the Eagles certainly have made it clear they want him to retire as an Eagle. They negotiated late last fall. Then they resumed, as we talked about on our show from the Combine. Nothing would get done or even talks until they saw the George Kittle deal and the Travis Kelce deal. So both deals got done. The Eagles started talking to Zach and his agent 3 weeks ago, and they exchanged ideas, but there was sort of a chasm, if you will, between both sides.
That's a big word.
I had to look it up, actually.
Did you look it up?
I want to make sure I was right.
Okay.
So there was a little bit of a gap. And the Eagles would like to do that's kind of closer to Travis Kelce's deal, which is very team-friendly. And Zach, who's sort of a borderline Hall of Fame player in terms of production, he wants one that is not Kittle's deal. No one's getting Kittle's deal at $15 million, but somewhere between Kittle and Kelce. So they're not there yet. And I think he's a little bit frustrated because you don't want to have to worry about this stuff when you're a player, when you got to go on the field. And I remember talking to an ex-NFL quarterback many years ago who said he gave his team a deadline. Saturday of week 1, before we go into our meeting Saturday night, if the deal's not done, we're not talking anymore. So if you're Zach, who's a consummate professional, who's, by the way, a little bit of an emotional guy in a good way, he really deeply cares about his teammates. And I think he's a little bit taken aback by they've not offered him the kind of deal. Now, we know the Eagles, in history, have rewarded their players big time. Jeffrey Lurie's been great with it. But there's something missing here, and I think it's bothering Zach. And Geoff, they have not had meaningful talks in 3 weeks, so the season starts, obviously, in less than 2 hours. So it did not looking good right now, but he does have 2 years left. The one thing before we move on here, there's no guaranteed money left. When you're a 30-year-old player, you know the team could cut you. And they did draft Dallas Goedert to eventually be his replacement.
Right.
So let's be honest here.
It's a tough deal.
It's a tough deal for the Eagles. I understand both sides. I've talked to both sides. It's not easy.
Well, what I was going to say is, I think when you look at Zach Ertz, he's not George Kittle. Kittle is to me, the best tight end in the league. He's not George Kittle. But you could make the argument that for the Eagles, he is their George Kittle. Now, again, I'm not taking sides as to what he should. I don't follow the money the way Adam does. That's not something I do.
Sure.
I don't, deep down, I don't really care about that.
I've been trying to follow money for years. It just hasn't worked.
Right. Show me the money. The big question, I guess, is age, because you're dealing with a 30-year-old tight end, and he's a great player. And like I said, for the Eagles, he's their George Kittle. He's super valuable to what they do, and particularly with this uncertainty at wide receiver. I mean, we hope it works out with Rieger and Hightower. Deshaun's not playing for 5 more years, so obviously they're looking at Rieger and Hightower as being important guys going forward. So he's a really important piece. But then you get into the idea that, are you giving him a big number long-term deal as a 30-year-old tight end when a couple years ago in the second round you drafted a tight end? It's a
tough deal.
That's why I don't deal with this stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
tough deal.
Trey, is it fair to say that if Zach Ertz were a defensive end or an offensive tackle, maybe even a cornerback, this wouldn't be an issue? But he's a tight end for a team that has historically liked to be 11 personnel, 3 wide, 1 tight end, and they've got a pretty good tight end waiting in the wings.
Yeah, and I think that's what's really hurting this whole contract negotiation is that you have Dallas Goedert sitting right there that is extremely talented, a better run blocker, not as talented when it comes to, like you were saying, receiving and everything, but he is a better run blocker when you need him to be. And, I think that's really hurting this whole contract negotiation. But one of the things that I've always been about is that, when you get this closer to the game time, it's just too many distractions with everything that's going on when you're getting ready for a game and we're going on the news talking about a contract negotiation. To me, I just feel like, let your agents handle that. And I get it, man. You want to get paid. You want to get your money.
And I don't begrudge anybody. I hope
I
hope Zach Ertz gets the most money he can possibly get.
Yeah.
I mean,
But I just feel like, it's game time right now. Man. Let that take care of yourself. Let the agents take care of that, handle it, and let's go ahead and go do what we got to do.
Who's his agent, Adam?
Steve Carrick, who also has Austin Hooper.
Okay.
Interestingly enough.
Yeah.
Trey, real quick, because Doug and Andy and the tree here, we've seen so much 12 personnel from the Eagles out of necessity. They have the talent there, but they also had a lot of injuries and moving parts at wide receiver. If I were to kind of shoot up Doug Peterson with the old truth serum and said, hey, Doug, would you going forward rather be an 11 personnel type of offense or a 12 personnel type of offense? Don't you think he'd probably say 11 personnel?
Absolutely. He would much rather be an 11 personnel offense just because, I mean, now that's going to put your defense, the defense is going to come out and play nickel most of the time.
Right.
And you can try to, expose that.
Yeah.
Well, I will say this, just a quick point. The one nice thing about both Goddard and Ertz is they can detach from the formation. They're not traditional tight ends. Now, Ertz doesn't have that great run after catch. Like, I remember Goddard had a long touchdown. I think it was against Dallas a couple of years ago. They ended up being called back.
Called back.
Yeah, for which was
Phantom
a bad
push-off.
call, yes.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Ertz is not going to make that play.
Yeah.
That's where Goddard's athleticism, it shows up more than what Ertz is. But you can still detach these guys from the formation, and you don't have to line up in tight formation. And that's what teams are looking for now in tight ends.
Yeah, there's a little roll of the dice here with the Eagles, a bigger one, because if they do want to eventually move on and be more 3 wide, 1 tight end, well, you got to have 3 wide receivers. And Deshaun Jackson's not getting any younger. Right, and Jalen Reagor has a lot to prove. We have to see him in his debut
As
today.
does Hightower, who I think's an ascending talent,
yeah.
but he's still a 5th-round pick who has some things that need to be worked on.
He had a phenomenal training camp. But just one thing I want to add with Hightower, we forgot to talk about him. Jeff had brought this up on our show. His football intelligence is so high up here for a rookie. But the one issue, you brought it up on our show, Greg, recently. He's thin. He's 185. He's built like Darius Slayton of the Giants.
Yeah.
So you can't do anything about that. He has the body that he has.
Right.
But you can't coach speed. And if they protect today, it's bombs away, Jeff. I'm telling you, they're going to, if they can protect now, because the question is, Trey, do they go? Here's a question for both of you guys, though, before we move on. Do you come out with 7-man protection, or do you wait to see if you need help?
The 7-man trail does this too, but the 7-man is more for specific kinds of plays. I don't think you're going to do that as a foundational approach. It's specific concepts.
I think what you're going to see is you're going to see them kind of bring those receivers a little closer to the tackles a little bit to kind of force those DNs in a little bit more. Because the worst thing for an offensive tackle, especially when you're dealing with some of these speed rushes and you have someone like a young Chase Young out there that's, 6'4", 265, and can run. The worst thing as offensive tackle is to look out there and you see a DN probably about 2 or 3 yards away, and you got to drop back and try to stop that.
Is it more difficult? Here's my question to you: is it more difficult to pass protect when there's more initial space between you and the defensive end?
Yeah, that makes it hard when you have a little bit more space.
Yes.
I want that DN to line up closer on me.
Okay.
Because then that makes me not have to move as much. I can get on him a lot quicker. I can stop him before he really gets going.
You don't want him to develop velocity and momentum.
No.
Okay.
You don't want, especially when you're teaching guys to catch.
Right.
And you're sitting out there and you're catching, and you have a defensive end coming with a full head of steam. It could get ugly real quick.
Okay.
All right, inactives will be coming soon. I want to tell everybody, if you are as impressed as we all here are with the production and the quality, high-tech graphics and everything of this show, I got to tell you about the people who are working behind the scenes, Rebel Hill Productions. Bring your show idea or video concept to life with Rebel Hill Productions. That's the team behind Inside the Birds pregame live. We got our guys, Zach James, James Hyden, and their crew doing an excellent job, as you can see. So make sure you contact them at info@rebelhillconsulting.com to discuss how they can help you with the power of video. Mention Inside the Birds and receive a 10% discount on your video project. They're tremendous people. You got to give them a call. Rebel Hill Productions, email them, info@rebelhillconsulting.com. These guys are true professionals, and I know we're all enjoying it. Awesome. You're starting to see a little bit of a crowd here. We're at Goose Island Brewhouse in Fishtown, having a great time. It's a wonderful afternoon.
Oh, yes.
It's a good fall
The important thing
afternoon.
is it's a football Sunday.
Yes.
That's what the most important thing is.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, here's some
Thank you so
applause.
much.
We got it. We love it. All right, let's talk a little bit about the other guy for Washington, their quarterback that we talked a little about, Dwayne Haskins. And it's kind of like the sarcastic Eagles fan is going to say, this always happens to the Eagles. Some guy who's not having a good year all of a sudden just explodes against the Eagles. And so Dwayne Haskins last year, let me read these numbers, in that one game that he played against them. He was 19 for 28, 261 yards, completed 68% of his passes, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 123.1 passer rating, which was his second best of the year, and he only took 1 sack. This is a guy who only completed 58% of his passes for the year and had a 76.1 passer rating. What in the world went on?
Protection. And he didn't take 1 sack. He only they only gave away 1 sack. They can only get one because the coverage was there. The protection was there and the coverage was weak. So I think that when you have a quarterback like that, I think you need to throw as many, especially a rookie. You need to come out there and confuse them with different fronts. Come with some different blitzes, bring some other stuff to the table. But just Schwartz is not going to be someone that's going to come out there and blitz a lot. So he's going to allow the secondary to go out there and just make plays. So I think that the rush wasn't getting there either. So when you only give up 1 sack. Your offensive line get out there and the coverage wasn't there.
And just to play off something Adam said earlier, one thing Jim Schwartz has not done a lot of, everybody does it a little bit, but because I watch tape of all teams, there's a lot of teams that do this foundationally. One thing Jim Schwartz does not do is a lot of disguise and latent movement. Now, everybody does it a little, like I said, so I'm not going to sit here and say we never saw that from the Eagles, but I think that that's becoming a little more prevalent in the league, and it's certainly something you'd like to do with young quarterbacks.
Right.
Because the game is now really played for quarterbacks before the snap of the ball. The great quarterbacks understand where to go with the ball before it's snapped. The term I use is not processing, which everybody uses. I use the term eliminate and isolate. The great quarterbacks eliminate what's not there and isolate where to go before the ball is snapped. Now, they confirm and validate, obviously, on their first or second stab, but they know. With a young quarterback, you want to take him as far into his drop as possible before he feels comfortable with where he's going with the football.
Adam, I know you've said this all season, you feel like a change is coming from what they're talking about, the deception.
Well, there is, but see, this comes back to a guy that Greg told us about, and Will Parks. Will Parks was brought in for a specific reason.
I loved his tape in Denver.
Big nickel, use him as a linebacker. They wanted to add some window dressing, as you would.
Versatility, a guy who, in a sense, is that multi-positional, or the new term being used, positionless defender.
Correct.
That's what Will Parks is.
Now, my understanding is going to be Marcus Epps in that role today. Whatever they use Marcus Epps, it's not going to be Kayvon Wallace. So we'll see how they use it. But the thing that they wanted to do here is take the defense to the next level. And, Geoff, you set it up very well with Haskins. This is a second-year quarterback. Last year, he came in, he needed to grow up a little bit, mature a little bit. He lost a lot of weight this offseason, Greg. I know you know some people in Washington.
I do.
Where do you see this kid right now in his development?
Well, first of all, he incrementally improved last year as the season progressed. He was definitely lost the first 2 or 3 games, and then he incrementally improved. But let's talk about what kind of quarterback he is and needs to be. And they know this in Washington. He's predominantly going to be a pocket quarterback. Now, he lost a lot of weight, and in some ways, he's kind of an interesting, awkward mover. The way Jameis Winston kind of moves, it's kind of awkward. Mechanical, he doesn't look smooth and comfortable, but yet he moves around at times. I think Haskins will be able to do that. But at his core, he's going to be a pocket rhythm player. He's got a very strong arm. He's capable of throwing the ball without stepping in, which means he can throw with bodies around him. Okay, so he's got that ability, which is critical for a pocket quarterback. And he's got to develop better pocket movement. We talked about this earlier, that he's got to be able to move within the pocket. But they want him to be a rhythm player. And one kind of throw he can make very well is an absolutely necessary throw in the NFL is what we call firm touch throws in the middle of the field, where you have to put the ball, and this is primarily against zone, put the ball over linebackers, and before in front of the safeties. That's a firm touch throw. You don't drill it because then you'll stick it right on the linebacker, and you can't loft it because then the safeties are there. He's very, very good at that throw.
When you need to be that kind of offense and that kind of quarterback, wouldn't you say you, you need those kind of weapons to be able to catch the ball over the middle? And they have, as we mentioned, scary Terry McLaurin who can beat you deep. I like Steven Sims. He's a pretty good player.
Slot receiver.
Slot receiver, but they're not exactly teaming with talent at the tight end position the way the Eagles are. So, and this is also a new scheme, a new coaching staff. The first game, a weaker offensive line. I feel like the door's got to be open for the Eagles to capitalize on it.
Well, they should.
They can't make it easy for this guy.
The guy who's fascinating to me in Washington is Antonio Gibson. And I guess he's going to start a running back.
Correct.
I loved his tape. Again, I saw him as a slot receiver, but he also ran the ball at Memphis, so they obviously viewed him, as a lot of coaches did, by the way. I think I was in the minority, but I saw him as a slot receiver. I think a lot of coaches that I've spoken to, and I know that Adam's spoken to, saw him more as a running back. But he is an explosive athlete who's big. I think he was 6 feet half inch and 228. I think he ran about a 4.4. He can run. He was unbelievable in the wide receiver screen game in Memphis. I would expect to see him in the screen game out of the backfield, because those are easy throws that help a quarterback get comfortable. So I would expect to see that.
All right, we are waiting on the inactives. They should be coming out in the next minute or two. Go ahead.
One thing I want to add on Antonio Gibson. I spoke to his college head coach at Memphis, Ryan Silverfield.
This guy's your new buddy, man, Ryan Silverfield.
Nice guy. But I just called him. I said, hey, Coach, I just want to ask you about Gibson. What's interesting was when
after he hung up 4 times, he finally talked.
It was six times the charm. But what he said was, look.
Zoomed him in the middle of the night.
It's all about Zoom now. When they got him, they didn't know what to do with him because Greg just talked about his body. I mean, he's almost 230 pounds. When is the last time you saw a slot receiver 230 pounds?
Well, I think it's different kinds
like
of slots, because I can think back, and Trey will remember this.
But who can run like this, though, Greg?
I can think back to the Saints using Marcus Colston in the slot. You know, basically the inside slot to trips formations a lot. And Colston, I don't know if he was 230, but he was certainly a big
tall,
man.
But he couldn't run like this, though.
Right.
This kid.
So I mean,
so what they did, what Silverfield said, that most of the teams that called him said they're going to play him at running back, not receiver.
Right.
But it gives. I know it's only his first game, so you don't want to give him too much responsibility. But, Geoff, you just said this. They don't have a lot of talent on offense. If the kid can handle the volume of playing receiver and running back, they're going to move him a lot. So I'm fascinated to see, because you have no preseason tape. You had no offseason with the guy. That's going to be fun to see how they do it.
Listen, I mean, I'm going to mention something now. This is a schematic statement, not a strict player-to-player analogy. So I don't want people to go, oh, my God, you know.
Yeah.
Where was Scott Turner last year?
Carolina. Christian McCaffrey.
He's McCaffrey in their offense, okay? Because McCaffrey was split out a lot. He lined up in a whole bunch of different spots. Yep. Again, I don't want people to think I'm saying Gibson, as we sit here today, is Christian McCaffrey. But coaches think schematically.
Right.
That's the way they think. You know that, Trey. They think schematically. You know, and I think they see Gibson in this offense in that role, certainly as time develops.
But how much can we realistically expect for Washington to be able to execute a lot of what they want to do when it's the season opener and it's a new scheme and a new coach and an offensive line that's really just trying to gel for the first time? How creative can they be with the football in that regard?
I think they're going to try to be extremely creative, just because they have, like you said, you don't have
the only way
any
they can
preseason games. So everybody has absolutely no idea what to prepare for.
Yep.
So you can come out there and just, you may as well hold on to your hands, because you have no clue as to what's going to happen and what kind of front they're going to come out in. They might come out and run Wildcat the entire. No one knows.
No.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when you say that, from an Eagles standpoint, it kind of has to make you wonder what the plan might be today for Jalen Hurts, as far as no preseason tape, and will he be active, which we'll find out.
Yeah.
If he's active, you got to think he'll be on the field a little bit, right?
Oh yeah,
you can't help himself.
He's going to get out there on the field, but I don't think you're going to put him on the center. I don't think you want to ruffle Carson's feathers. You know what I'm saying? You want to keep his mind.
My friend, that's been done. They drafted him in the second round.
Yeah, but you mess around and take reps from Carson right now. You can even see it when McCown had to step in and help him against it in the Atlanta game. When he got knocked out the game, he was like, look, I need to get back in here. I don't know if you're going to do that and put Hurts in there.
How did Doug respond when they took him out and put Donovan in? You were there then, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
But no, but he did say, because he was promised he would still be the starter, and then he wasn't happy about it. So, but what quarterback wants to be pulled off the field?
Exactly.
No one does.
No
one does.
No. So if you don't see him being used under center, do you think he'll be on the field in some capacity?
Yeah, he'll probably put him in, give him some running back formations, probably put him in some, get him out of slot. And there's no telling. How you have a do a reverse pass or something like that. Who knows?
A gimmick type play for sure.
And by the way, we might see Rager and Hurts on the field at the same time.
Can I just tantalize you with the thoughts of what you might see if they're both in the backfield?
And the NFL has evolved to some degree. Again, I just use the word gimmick, but I think a lot of these kinds of plays now have moved from the gimmick concept to a little more acceptable, and they're more misdirection, deception plays is the term I would use. And I think a lot of teams work in that direction. I'm not saying that every team's going to get a Taysom Hill. That's not my point. But I think teams think a lot more offensively now in terms of misdirection and deception, and to try to create those explosive plays.
Absolutely. All right, well, I look forward to it, and I'm just feeling a vibe that
All right,
you might see
inactives.
some Rager and some Hurts in the backfield today.
Ooh,
Inactives. What do we
Lane
got?
Johnson is actually inactive.
Inactive.
Wow,
Inactive.
surprise, yes. His
Oh.
ankle's bad. He couldn't tough
Wow.
it out. Yeah, that is surprising.
Well, Trey, you better get down to the stadium.
Wow.
Oh, Jalen Hurts, inactive. Jeffrey Tuhill, Casey Tuhill,
So
Derek
Jalen
Barnett.
Hurts is inactive.
So-
Yes, he is inactive, so they'll address 2 quarterbacks. I'm guessing Jordan Mailata, based on what I heard in practice,
play
will
right
start for
tackle?
him, but I don't know that for a fact. So we know it's either going to be Mailata or Matt Pryor. Oh boy, that is not good. Lane's ankle, I told you, if he was playing today, he was going to try to play on it. The ankle clearly was not right.
Who
and
else
that's
is
where it
inactive? Who are the other names?
Yeah,
Any-
so
any-
the
anybody
inactives are
big?
Hurts, Jeffrey,
Jalen Hurts, Alshon Jeffrey.
Sanders, who we know, Casey Tuhill. They'll dress 5 defensive ends, by the way, today. Lane Johnson, Javon Hargrave, and Derek Barnett. So they'll
Let me
dress
ask-
5 D ends. Jannard Avery will be the 4th defensive end. Yeah, Tuhill's inactive. They'll dress 3 running backs. They'll dress 5 receivers. Jalen Rager, as we said, is active. And they'll dress just 2 quarterbacks. So this, guys, okay, let's
So
go to
this
you, Trey.
offensive line is really
This-
going to have Trey.
Yeah.
If you
So-
think about what they were even before JP, they're going to
So-
be without 3 of their projected
So
starters
let
from 4
Trey
months
speak
ago.
to this, because I
Yeah.
think this impacts your schematic approach.
Yeah.
Because there's certain things I don't think you'll feel comfortable doing with this offensive line. Don't you agree?
Oh yeah, this is extremely shocking. Especially when you have someone like a Lane that and I think Lane, I think the world of Lane. I think he's an awesome athlete, and whatever I say now, I say to his face is as a player, and when you're someone that this team depends on, you got to take care of yourself, especially in the off season. All right, so like I said earlier with this, if you knew that this was something that you were going to have to get fixed, this should have been done instead of going and playing in the Pro Bowl when you were an alternate. This should have been done instead of, you mocking Chase Young, and when Chase Young did the little thing and he jumped on the plyo boxes, jumped on 60 inches of plyo box, then Lane came in and was like, oh, that ain't nothing, I'm going to jump on those plyo boxes as well. Your ankle should have been getting fixed. So, let's stop with all the little, all the playing around with all the little, doing stuff for social media and being about your business, man, because your team needs you. And right now you're putting not only your offensive line, but your quarterback in jeopardy by not being able to play in this game.
What is this offensive line going to look like today? Because now we don't know who's starting at right guard and right tackle, right, because of Lane not playing. Is it Herbig at right guard and then Matt
They
Pryor
didn't
at right
announce it,
tackle?
but I could only tell you that he took a lot of reps there, and I know Mailata took a lot of reps at right tackle.
Jordan Mailata, right?
So we'll see. They don't have much of a choice here.
Well, the bottom line is, Greg, a couple of people,
Stuart Petto's active today, by the way.
someone's going to be playing a lot today that has never played in an NFL game before.
That is correct.
More than one person.
Well, if
Yes.
it's Herbig and Mailata, that's 2 people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that means that Herbig's probably going to be your right guard, and then you probably have to bump Matt Pryor out the right tackle.
Right.
Man, this is going to be a problem. If for whatever reason, if JP goes down, then now you're going to have Jordan Mailata out there. I mean, this is going to be a ragtag group when you put these guys out there. I mean, that's not good. That is not good.
Is there any chance that Jack Driscoll will play today? Because they want to put him at right tackle and keep Pryor to play left tackle in case JP does come out?
Possibly.
Oh,
But then now you have a rookie out there that's, and I like Jack Driscoll. I watched some film on him when he was coming out of Auburn. I thought he was nice. He was decent, a nice 45 setter. Did a good job at putting hands on guys. But, man, this is going to be a different animal now. And you're going to have guys where they're going to be able to hear the cadence. This isn't going to be,
Right.
like when you go back and you watch the Kansas game, because that's the only game we've had a chance to watch with no fans in the stadium, you can hear the cadence. You can hear all the calls. So it's only going to take them a matter of time to where they get all these calls down, and then ends are going to be pinning their ears back, getting after you. And you want to trust that to a rookie?
Well, let me ask you this.
Dare I bring up a certain Sunday night game
Could we
that
see-
you missed, and
know,
because you missed it,
got the
Donovan
extra year on
got
my contract,
blitzkrieged?
Could we see some no-huddle tempo then?
Possibly, but then again, that's the cadence is always the same.
Right.
So now if you say, okay, we're going to go no huddle, it's always set hut.
Yeah, but
and when you have
the only
these
reason I
DNs
mention that is just theoretically there's 3 different kinds of no huddle. I mean, you could go right away, you could go sort of midway, or you could go late. So, I mean,
you're going to have to announce, but then, so if you're going no huddle, you're going to have to announce what the cadence is on.
yeah.
So you're going to have to say Monday, Tuesday, whatever that is, and the defensive ends,
They'll
they're
start picking it
going to
up.
start picking up on that, because there was a time where Holmes came out there and he was like color, and that's one of the sacks that was given up. He came out there and yelled color. The DN called it, and he just rushed up the field. Bam, got a sack.
Right.
Beat the tackle off the right side, got a quick sack on him. So now
You're talking about it in the Thursday night game?
Yeah, in the Thursday night
I remember
game.
that play.
Yeah,
I watched the tape.
You can hear.
Yeah.
You can hear all the calls. You can hear the quarterback making all of those adjustments. So now this is going to be interesting. You know, to me, I would go silent count.
Oh,
but
boy.
Yeah.
That's just my personal.
You're going to
opinion
see a
when it
lot
comes
of
to
quick game. This could be a Greg Ward game.
This is. I'll tell you what. This is going to be a major challenge for Geoff Stoutland.
Yeah.
Geoff, I mean, this is not good.
Yeah,
This is not good.
It's not ideal. As I said
yes,
at the
yes.
start of the show, the Eagles are in mid-season form with their injuries, and the good thing is they're used to this.
Well,
They've
now
had to
you
play
get
like
to the
this
whole
before.
nature of the game. I mean, because obviously now the defense becomes a bigger factor. You know, it's not. My guess is we're not looking at a 38-35 game.
No.
Yeah,
So
no,
now,
no.
you know.
We'll talk about the over/under in a little bit
Right,
when we
right,
wrap this up. I want to get into our Ask ITB segment. I'm really fascinated by this. You know, we've answered a lot of questions today amongst ourselves, but obviously we've put it out on social media. You can ask us questions each week for this game. Hashtag AskITB. We take the 3 or 4 best questions that are submitted. First question, and Adam, you were just alluding to it, comes from our Inside the Birds Facebook page from BJ King/Mitchell. Which of the new coaches are you looking to see? Now, Geoff Stoutland's not a new coach, but he's certainly going to be under the microscope today. But a new coach you're interested in seeing today.
The guy was on the staff before, but Matt Burke now being the defensive line coach. He's a really smart guy, but he's never coached defensive line. The reason why the Eagles have gone through a couple defensive line coaches since Doug Peters became the head coach is they've not taught technique well enough. Well, Burke's never coached it. And the spotlight's on him.
Right.
They spent a lot. I know Hargrave's not playing today, but once Hargrave comes back and they're going to have a really deep defensive line, they've got to have a great year because they've invested so much money in this defensive line. So I think it starts today, and they're going to have to play some games up front. They've got to win. And Matt Burke is on my spotlight.
All right, new coaches. Trey, they got a lot of them.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with you with Matt Burke with the defensive line coach. I think that, you know, because you have a group that needs to get after the quarterback, you're looking for more production with him. You brought in a secondary, you moved some pieces around in the secondary and improved it. So now you want to see the production on the defensive front to get after that quarterback.
Greg.
DB coach.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Marquand Manuel.
Marquand
Manuel's
Manuel.
critical here because I think, you know, it's a revamped group. You know, I think Nicole Roby-Coleman's a really good player, by the way. So
Yeah.
I think that was a really good pickup. I think he's a tough little slot corner who's done well in this league. But I think this secondary is going to be critical. You know, you just can't give up explosive plays in this league. That's what the league in some ways has become. Offense is trying to create explosive plays, and defenses cannot allow explosive plays. So I think that's critical.
Yeah, Marquand Manuel, certainly under microscope. From what university? Your favorite one, Trey? Marquand Manuel?
Oh, is he from Florida State?
No, he's from Florida. That's what I was trying to get at
Same
you a
state.
little bit.
Yeah.
You know,
Gator
he played in the same secondary as Lito Shepherd at Florida.
You didn't watch the game yesterday, did you?
No, I heard about it. I had to teach a class at my studio last night, so I didn't get a chance to watch the game.
Well, it's a good thing for you.
Yeah, I heard about it.
Hey, real quick, tell everybody about your class.
Oh yeah, Pino's Palette. It's over in Cherry Hill. So I own an art studio, so I paint all the time. So I taught a class last night. I think we had maybe 9 people. We painted Galaxy Lake.
Oh,
Wow.
nice.
So it was a beautiful painting.
You're a
I thought it was
Renaissance man.
Yeah, man,
You
it was
are.
fun. It was
Yeah.
fun.
And he plays golf?
Him and
Yeah,
Dhani
yeah,
Jones,
yeah.
right? Dhani Jones, Renaissance man.
Oh yeah, man. Just pop a bottle of wine and
Yeah, wow.
There you go.
Relaxing.
Oh,
There
my
you go.
goodness.
Pino's Palette for
Yes,
anyone that's
in Cherry
interested in
Hill,
Cherry
yeah.
Hill. Next question comes from Aaron Puga. Could the level of intensity tie into the rash of injuries the Eagles have had the past few years? And I assume he's meaning the intensity at practice because there's no preseason games. So Doug has said that he was going to kind of ratchet up the level of intensity. Clearly not what you saw in Kansas City, though, with Andy Reid.
Oh, now the practice was still intense during times, you know, but it was just all that water breaks. I'm like, come on, man. I mean, another water break.
Too many water breaks.
But, you know, I think at some point, though, you want it to be an aggressive practice. You want it to be a physical practice just because you don't have those preseason games to get ready for. And I think one of the things that you're going to see is conditioning is going to be an issue because that's what you use those preseason games for, to ramp up where you play to one quarter, then you play to 2 quarters, and you play to the half and come back for that second series. So I think conditioning is going to be one of the bigger things. So, yeah, I think it could have something to do with it just because guys haven't gone through the OTAs and all of that, what you usually go through, so possibly.
Yeah, now on conditioning, today is not a pickle juice day. It's not that humid, right?
High 70s there.
Yeah,
High
but it's
70s?
still going to be, I mean, yeah, but you're going to have someone going full tilt. The red jerseys are off.
Right.
You know, so, you know, you're going to have to exert yourself a little bit more than what you've had to in the past couple weeks in practice.
What do you think about the idea of this really intense training camp leading? Because some of these injuries, Adam, happen even before they really started to put the pads on and go to the scrimmages.
Yeah, well, they had the ramp-up period, which was done because they wanted to make sure there were not a rash of soft tissue injuries. The Eagles had a couple of them. It's always hard to quantify, okay, well, because of what happened in this offseason, they weren't physically fit. I could tell you from talking to several teams, compared to 2011 coming to the lockout, the players are in much better shape this year. Why? Just like Todd Gurley said, they had nothing better to do, but they worked out. So,
but there's still been a lot of muscle injuries.
You're going to see some.
To borrow from what baseball is going through, and we've heard Joe Girardi, the Phillies manager, say this on why he kind of gives the early hook this year, is because there are an exorbitant number of pitchers who are injured on the IL in baseball this year, and they feel like that's from, you know, the interruption from COVID and then a different guy. Do you guys kind of think that you're going to see more soft tissue injuries this year because of the altered training camp and no preseason games?
Yeah, I think so, because there's a difference between being in shape for, you know, having mirror muscles compared to the muscles that need to go out there and push guys around. So I think that's you'll probably see a little bit more of those soft tissue injuries as this, well, at least for the first couple weeks.
This just in from Tim McManus from ESPN.com. Jack Driscoll will start at right tackle.
Oh, who teased that one?
Wow. Driscoll will start at right tackle.
I have said this many times, and Adam on the podcast. I know this team loves Jack Driscoll, and I even said it wouldn't shock me if this guy got into play sooner than later. I'm not saying I knew he was going to start right tackle today, but I had a feeling that they were leaning in that direction. Adam, Stoutland loves this guy.
You did say that. It's weird, though, because Mailata, I'm told, got plenty of reps there. When are they going to trust this guy? I mean, it's 3 years now.
Unless the only thing with Mailata could be that they're a little uncertain about Peter's ability to finish, and Mailata is the left tackle backup, and they feel like they might need Mailata to play snaps at left tackle.
That makes a lot of sense. Also, Trey, you said you watched, I'm sure both of you guys watched him at Auburn a lot, and I know that offense generally thrives on RPOs and a lot of motion and athletic movement from their offensive line.
They're a pretty straightforward run game. A lot of people, because they're spread, a lot of people think it's, toss the ball around, but they run the ball. So he has a lot of experience as a run blocker.
Do you think maybe that's part of today's, we're going to run it on them and try to tire out that front seven, or is he just the guy that they think is the best replacement right now?
I think they feel like he's the best replacement right now. Yeah, you're going to try to get out there and run the ball, but at some point it's going to become 3rd and 10.
Right.
I mean, that 3rd and 10 is going to happen.
Right.
You're not going to run a draw.
Sound like me. I say that all the time.
That's going
Everything
to
changes when it's 3rd and 9 or 3rd and 10. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, Jack Driscoll lining up against Ryan Kerrigan and Chase Young.
We got this one. Nate Herbig, according to Jeff McClain of the Inquirer, will start at right guard.
Wow.
Holy smokes.
So Herbig at right guard and Driscoll at right tackle.
So your right side of your offensive line has played exactly 0 snaps in the NFL.
They will just not give Matt Pryor a chance. And I mean, when you go back and you look at it, I know he struggled during camp, but when you go back and you look at the 2 games that he played in last year,
it was okay.
He played he had a solid game against Seattle and against New York.
I agree.
I mean, at least you have someone that's played in the game, understands the calls, and has some NFL experience. Instead, you want to go with 2 pretty much rookies out there for a game like this.
It feels like they set Pryor up to fail. I mean, they moved him to left tackle in camp just to see, and he had never played that even in college. And now that is, maybe his confidence was a little shaken from that.
It's easy.
Now they're not even put him in.
The bottom line is, and again, I'm one of those, guys who I want to see what happens, but they're obviously playing these two guys on the right side because they think it's their best option. These decisions are not made on a whim. We can sit and debate it, but this is what they think is their best option for this game.
For me, when I go back and I look at that film, to me, I say Matt Pryor is your and I've always been high on that being your right guard. And that's why I had a problem with them throwing him in at left tackle, because you throw him in when you're only a week away from the season opener, and you just throw him out there with no experience on the left side. He had been on the right side all throughout camp, and then you just throw him over there on the left side, and then Josh Sweat beats him for 7 or 8 sacks. I mean, how is that going to help your confidence when you're only a week away from game day?
No, I think it's a fair question, and it's something we're probably going to be talking about this next week, this time, when we preview Eagles versus Rams, and we're talking about offensive line issues.
Oh, my God. We're talking
Aaron
about the Rams.
Donald.
And we got Aaron Donald out there.
That's right, Aaron Donald, and they can bring it.
When you look at these first 5 weeks, they're going up against 4 of the teams are top 10 pass rushing teams at getting at the quarterback. I mean, Washington had over 40 sacks.
Right.
And then now you're looking at the Rams, they were like 49, 50. And then you look at the Steelers at the week 5.
Steelers
they were
led the
number
NFL.
1.
Yeah.
You know,
Sure.
so I mean, you know, these first couple of weeks, it's going to be.
That Steelers front's pretty
yeah, that's
difficult
pretty good.
to deal with.
TJ Watt's a pretty good player.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to the last question from Mac Ward on our Facebook Inside the Birds community group. Expectations for J-Jaw week 1 and moving forward with Reagor now being healthy. Now, if Rager's going to play that X, what are they going to do? Do you have some breaking news?
Yeah, I'm told Reagor will play extensively today. Unless something happens in the game, he's playing a ton of snaps.
Yeah, so expectations are that Jalen's going to play a lot of X. What becomes of Arcega-Whiteside, who has practiced both at the X, at the slot? Has he just become a backup now?
I think they're going to try to mix him into the game plan.
Yeah.
I mean, he seems like somebody that took this time to kind of build up his confidence a little bit, because last year it was just not good. You know, it wasn't the performance that we thought he would be and how he would come out and play. So it seems to me like he took this offseason and really kind of worked on himself, worked on his confidence. You heard some good things about him coming out of camp where he made a couple plays, had a couple touchdowns in practice, but that's a totally different thing when it comes to game time.
Well, now it's interesting because when they go 3 wide, I would expect Greg Ward to be the slot receiver, wouldn't you?
I would too.
So, I mean, does Arcega-Whiteside just play selected snaps? I mean, let's
Rotationally,
assume Reagor
right.
is healthy and can truly play meaningful snaps.
Maybe red zone, Greg?
You know,
where
maybe
you
there's
can
just
capitalize
specific,
in 12
specific
personnel
situations,
yeah.
specific formation looks, but I would think he'd be more of that kind of player this week in particular, as opposed to a guy who's going to play 30 or 40 snaps.
Yeah, and I just want to reemphasize this, and Adam just said it, but you're going to see Jalen Reagor today. You're going to see a lot of Jalen Reagor. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw him in the backfield.
You're going to see jet
and then
sweeps.
coming out of the backfield with catches.
You're going to see jet sweeps.
They're going to use them.
Let me ask you a question, Trey, on that, what Geoff just said. When you're playing inexperienced linemen and you're going to run gadget players or some stuff that's new, do you trust these young guys to do it because they haven't really played?
Well, you know, if it's just like run, play, action stuff, you know, because now it's like, hey, just treat it like it's a run. You know, just go and treat it like it's a run, and then you let all the other stuff happen behind them. But, you know, those gadget plays are only first and second down. You know,
Right,
short
okay.
yardage stuff.
Right.
I mean, little quick, little hits. I mean, you know, you mess around and get a penalty, and you first and 15. That gadget play is out of the window.
Right.
You know,
Right.
it's.
All right, well, let's move on. It's time for our predictions.
Oh,
It's
God.
time to get into the game. We're going to figure out now that we know all this
It's a
information.
tough one, man.
My favorite
gonna
thing,
win?
predictions.
Yeah,
almost as
you're
much
great
fun
at
as
it.
lists.
You're going to wind up. You're going to wind up beating all of us. You know that.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, you are. I know, because you are the GOAT of analysis. So I expect you to really be on top.
I'm a
of all
process guy, you know.
this. Trust the process.
Trust the process.
All right, of course, you know, we thank our presenting sponsor, DraftKings. We're going to get into the spread and the total in a second. Remember, Thursday was just the warm-up. Now is the time to get ready for Sunday's full slate of action, and there's no better place to get in the game than with DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app. So don't miss this offer. If you haven't tried DraftKings Sportsbook yet, head to the app now because you don't want to miss it. DraftKings Sportsbook is giving all new users the chance to turn $1 into $100 when you bet on any team. That's right, you can place a $1 bet on any team, and if that team wins, you cash a cool Benjamin. So how could you pass that up? If you're new to DraftKings Sportsbook, head to the app now to scout their latest offer. Bet with DraftKings Sportsbook. A sportsbook goes wherever you go. DraftKings is a safe, reliable, and secure making it easy for you to deposit and withdraw your money at your convenience. So download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use the promo code ITB when you sign up to get this can't-miss offer. Pick any team during Week 1. Bet $1 and you can win $100 if they win. That's $1 to win $100 when you use the promo code ITB during sign-up for a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Got to be 21 or older. In Pennsylvania only, in partnership with Meadows Racetrack and Casino. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, well, the latest that we've seen on DraftKings, and I don't know if the line has moved, fellas, since all this information came out, but the Eagles were 5.5-point favorites to win their season opener with an over-under of 43. So I will start with you.
I never have even looked at a line.
Yeah, he's not a gambler. We don't gamble here.
I just got to give out the information.
What do you see the tempo of this game, Greg? Now that we know the offensive line has changed.
Yeah.
And we know Doug likes to be aggressive, but sometimes when you're given these late movement on your offensive line, sometimes you can't do what you really want to do. How do you see this tempo of this game?
Yeah, that's a fascinating question. I still think Doug, and again, this is just pure speculation on my part, I think Doug is going to be aggressive. I don't think Doug is going to come out and try to play a 13-10 game. Unless after a quarter, the game plays out in such a way that he just feels like, hey, this is what we're going to have to try to do. But I think that Doug's mindset, just like Andy Reid's mindset, I think he's going to be aggressive. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to drop back and toss it to Deshaun Jackson on 10 of the first 15 plays, but I don't think he's going to play this game to hide his offense.
Okay.
I still think he's going to try to create schematically.
Okay.
Now, if it turns out that, it's clear that Jack Driscoll can't block Ryan Kerrigan or Chase Young, well, obviously that changes the equation. But I don't think he's going to go in playing scared, so to speak, just trying to protect his offense.
All right.
Just my sense.
Give me a final score.
I'll go Eagles 20-17.
Eagles
Tight, low
20-17.
scoring. Okay.
All right.
I'm on that.
By the way, I just checked, and the most updated line on DraftKings Sportsbook app is the Eagles are now, unbelievably, they've moved up. They're favored by 6. It was at 5.5 last time I looked at it. Now it is 6, even in light of all this
Jack
movement on the
Driscoll's
injury
family.
line. Jack Driscoll's family? They're moving the line?
They're happy, yeah. They're happy, right.
I love it. That's great. Trey Thomas, what do you see happening today?
Oh man, I see this being it's definitely going to be under. I don't think they're going to go over 43 points. I'm going like 17-14, something like that.
And who's winning?
Tight game. Eagles win. Maybe pull it out. I don't know.
It's a tough call, yeah.
Yeah, with all these injuries on the offensive line, I'm really not feeling that confident with it, man. I think that Washington's defensive front is the advantage right now. But
they could control the game.
I'm just gonna be the homer in me right now. It's just gonna go pull it out, but I'm not feeling too strong about it. To be honest with you.
Well, wouldn't you say though, like season opener, a very odd situation. Like if you get out of there with a W, you don't worry about the style points in the season.
No.
Is that fair, Trey?
You take anything
Well,
you
it
get
depends on if you can get out of there with your quarterback healthy.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, you have 5 headhunters out there that's coming to get you. This could be a problem. This is this is a problem.
These late offensive line changes during the week, Geoff, because it's not like Driscoll had been getting the ones for 3 weeks.
Right.
So you worry about that. You have Nate Herbig starting his first ever NFL game. So is Driscoll. So the right side's completely changed. This is not going to be easy. I picked it originally 24-13 this week on our show during the week. I'm going to change it. I'm with Cosell. I don't. The Redskins, the Washington team, they don't score a lot of points. They just don't have the great offensive personnel. I think the defense is going to have to carry this game for the Eagles. I think Schwartz is going to have to be creative. You got to get turnovers. You got to get to the quarterback because you're going to have to figure out a way to get you better field position. I see the Eagles only scoring 2 touchdowns now. I see it. I'm going to go 17-13 Eagles. Wouldn't surprise me though if there's an upset. I see way under. I'm not a gambling man. I don't gamble, but Geoff, you and I talked about this week. I was wrong last year because this game, week 1 last year, went way over. It was crazy scoring because the Eagles got behind. This time, remember, and I want to talk about this before we get out of here. Miles Sanders is out. Boston Scott starts. That time, I've been asked this a lot, so I'll address it. I see the split being 65-35, 60-40 in terms of touches. Scott's first up. Clement gives him a little bit more power. Greg talked about Scott being a satellite back, outside formation.
Yeah.
Now, one thing, I want to ask Greg this. And Geoff, you brought it up to me on our show this week. Carson does not like checking down Greg. You know that from the tape study. Do you have to check down this game, Greg?
Well, I think, number one, you want to control the ball if you can, because you want your defense to play fewer snaps in this game. You know, you just don't want this game to be a game where your defense is on the field for 70 snaps, 75 snaps. So I think you want to be selective, being aggressive, and I think he will be. But I think there's also a sense in this game that you have to try to shorten the game to some degree. You know, there's not a lot here on your O-line. You know, you can't make this game totally about your offense because, as Trey said, it could fall apart. Because that's the one thing you have to be concerned about. It could fall apart. And that's, you know, that can't happen.
We put out a poll on Inside the Birds earlier this week asking what positional depth teams were most concerned about. We had 3 categories and another. I believe the categories were wide receiver, corner, and D-end. Overwhelmingly, I believe, last time I looked, other was winning because a lot of people were concerned about the offensive line.
Several thousand.
And that's before today's news came out. That was just with the idea that Matt Pryor might have to get in and start. One
final point. I think you're going to see bad plays by the Eagle offense today.
Oh, yeah.
The question is, how can they work through that? Does it impact the game in such a negative way that they can't overcome them? But you will see negative plays.
When you say shorten the game, Greg, I just want you to focus on that for a second. What kind of plays do you run?
Well, normally the running game shortens the game. When you say shorten the game, what I'm saying is you're trying to use the clock offensively.
Okay.
Because then, obviously, if you can do that offensively to some degree, they did this very well last year down the stretch, by the way. And shorten the game doesn't just mean run.
Right.
It can be a lot of short passes. You know, you want to sustain offense
ball
so
control.
that the clock moves, and therefore your defense doesn't play as much.
Got it.
Theoretically, there's less margin for error because your O-line can handle a 3-step throw. You know, that they can handle. So you're trying to do things that play to your offensive line as well.
Greg, I think the Eagles are going to be selectively aggressive today. I agree with you. I think they are going to look to take their shots. Their whole offseason mantra was about not being the slowest offense that you saw on tape in the NFL last year. But at the same time, and I think Trey can attest to this, when you face a team that has the aggressive front that Washington is going to have with Chase Young, Ryan Kerrigan, those 2 defensive tackles, Montez Sweat. We didn't even mention his name today. It was a first-round pick last year. I think back to what do Andy Reid and what do Doug Peterson do most when they see these kind of fronts? Screens, screens, and more screens, and not just your average bubble screen. But what's that? What do you call that one where Carson goes right, or back in the day with Donovan, and he throws back to the left? The fake screen to one side, and this is going to be a screen-heavy game. I see some ball control, and then once they can get that rhythm, I do see a lot of big shots.
The problem is we struggled with screens the past couple years.
But don't you think in December last year they got that part of their game?
Around a little bit.
Tight end screens.
Goddard is a big screen guy in this offense.
Yeah, I see that a lot today. And Goddard was your man of the game and your man of the game. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw 2 or 3 of those type reverse screens to him.
Do you go heavy 12 because of the issue with the offensive line to help out? Just 2 receivers have 2 tight ends. Greg,
I mean,
the usual?
You know, there's two thoughts there.
Okay.
You know, yes, if you go heavy 12, do you go tight formations to help? Yes, you can do that. The other thought, and Trey may disagree with this, but I just know the way teams think and what I see on tape, is you can also go empty, because empty you get the ball out quick and you try to spread the defense out. You know, we didn't talk much about the Washington secondary, but they've got some major question marks in their secondary as well. I mean, they're starting Apke at free safety. I guess it's Ronald Darby starting opposite Fuller, correct? You know, they've got some question marks.
Yeah.
So there's many ways to go. That's why I don't think Doug is a conservative thinker in that regard. I'm not saying they're going to be empty on half their snaps, but I think that you're not going to see him just pull everything in and say, okay, let's see if we can win 10-9.
Right. Another thing I'll say on top of what you just mentioned with Darby in there, and Eagles fans know this, they've watched it for years now. If Jalen Reagor's lining up at that X spot and Darby's across from him, look for slant, sluggo, double moves. Slants early, sluggos late.
Yep.
All it takes is 1 or 2 to connect.
Right.
The word from personnel people with Ronald Darby, he does not trust his eyes.
Right.
He reads it wrong. You could run a 4-1 speed is irrelevant when you don't trust your eyes.
Right.
They're going to go after him today.
Ronald Darby from?
Florida State.
All right, just to make sure you knew. All right, I didn't give my prediction yet. I think in the podcast I predicted 24-20. I'm changing it a little bit. I still think the Eagles score 24. I don't know how Washington really scores a lot of points today, especially if Darius Slay is on his A game. So I'm going to say 17. Eagles win 24-17. That means they just narrowly cover. But I think all four of us, if I do the quick math, would take the under on this game. Before we get out of here, a few more minutes. Just want to hear everybody's Super Bowl prediction real quick.
Oh, come on.
Come on, Greg. That's what we do.
I had to do that for. I had to do that for ESPN.
Yeah.
I had to do that for ESPN. I gave it about a half a second thought.
Okay.
I had to pick the NFC champ, the AFC champ.
I'm not
the
even.
Super Bowl
I'm
winner
just
and the
asking
MVP.
Super Bowl.
Are the
I'm taking
Chiefs
it
is
easy
just?
here.
You saw Week 1. The Chiefs looking just as good as they did last year.
They're good. Although I picked Seattle.
Did you? Why? Their defensive line.
I took them to go to the Super Bowl.
I don't give this a lot of thought.
No, but see, you watch Seattle
I don't give a lot of thought.
No, but you watch Seattle tape. Why do you like Seattle so much? I'm just curious.
Well, I really like Russell Wilson. I think they're improved defensively in the secondary significantly.
Okay. Oh, with
Now, their
Jamal
pass
Adams.
rush is a question,
Sure.
but I think they're improved significantly in the secondary.
Trey,
Going Chiefs.
you going Chiefs?
Yeah.
Taking the easy way.
Oh, yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I can accept that. Adam.
I've got it. Chiefs, Saints, and the Chiefs winning back-to-back.
Chiefs, Saints, Chiefs win the back-to-back. I also picked the Chiefs. I believe I have them beating the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. You can find out Adam's picks and my picks on all division winners, and including Coach of the Year, season-ending awards on InsideTheBirds.com. That's going to do it for the first Inside the Birds live pregame show here. Got to thank the people
job, man.
at Goose
Everyone.
Island Brew
Thank
House.
you so much.
Big thanks to Greg Cosell. Big thanks to Trey Thomas. My partner Adam Caplan, myself Geoff Mosher, the people at DraftKings, Rebel Hill Productions. It's been great. It's been a blast. We'll see you again next week this time. Thanks, everybody.